everyone, to the 2-year anniversary of the personal freedoms granted to us in Michigan by Prop 1, the MRTMA, the MILegalize proposal. This is a Michigan NORML broadcast taking place in conjunction with Jazz Cabbage Café. Thank you for joining us today. Welcome all. If you are participating on our Facebook page, feel free to post questions in the chat. We will try to share them with everyone and see if we can't get answers, or also to maybe start a new conversation. Currently, we have Jamie Lowell, of course, a longtime cannabis advocate, was part of the board of directors of MILegalize, and one of the maybe 9 people that can actually call themselves an author of the Prop 1 language. We also have a couple of board members from Michigan NORML, myself included, but we have Brad Forrester from way up in the north and Mr. Hashbash Adam Brook from the Royal Oak area. Welcome both.
Hey,
Thank you, Rick.
Thank you.
Yep. We also have Kevin, who's hanging out but has not enabled his sound yet. That's cool. It's all right. We appreciate you anyway, Kevin. Thanks for joining. I
did nonetheless, yeah.
Colin MacDougall joins us. Colin, of course, was part of the MILegalize group that helped us get Prop 1 passed, and also currently on the cast of Medical Mondays and Jazz Cabbage Café, plus Decriminalized Nature Ann Arbor, successfully getting mushrooms and entheogenic substances essentially decriminalized in A squared. Welcome, Colin.
Thanks for having me, Rick. Thanks for the awesome introduction.
You are very welcome. You deserve every word of it. Guys, it's been a pretty awesome situation so far. The 2 years that we've had been up and down a little bit, but mostly up, I think, right? Adam, what do you think about that? You're kind of the biggest critic of the group of the legalization program. What's up?
So it's all about moving the ball forward, as I say. And in the last 2 years, we've moved the ball leaps and bounds. Obviously, many people think that, 2 years ago, a law changed and things completely became legalized, or they became, I was talking to people today. No, you can't smoke a joint on your front porch in the neighborhood. No, you can't. That's not legal. I mean, it's a civil infraction. So if people understand the law, then they can work within it. The problem is, as I see it, the laws change, or worse than that, the laws don't even make it to the laws. A vote gets taken, and all of a sudden people think the law has changed because people are misinformed, and it's about information and correcting the misinformation. And the last 2 years has done a lot to correct a lot of bad information over the years, and certainly proved to the prohibitionists that the horrors that they claimed were coming have yet to arrive, at least in Michigan. And it's been 20 years since they had medical in Cali, and there still are no bodies. So, we've come a long way. We have a long way to go, but we've come a long way. And the persona of legalization, and I say this about other things too, but the persona of legalization is much bigger than its realities.
So I'd just like to say welcome to Berg, Colleen Keys, Bill Clark, all in the chat. Thank you very much for joining us. I think Adam brings up a good point. Of course, we can talk about the successes and maybe the shortcomings we've had here in Michigan, but really we set the scale on a national basis, and our successes have been reflected on a national basis too. Welcome to the broadcast, Tom Lavigne. Tom, MILegalize, Cannabis Council, an attorney of note, has been defending people for a very long time in this industry. We appreciate you being with us tonight.
Hello, gang. Very auspicious night.
I remember the legalization celebration on legalization night was at Cannabis Council, and you guys were so gracious to host us because there was a whole bunch of people, and I'm pretty sure we made a very big mess.
Yeah.
Last year too.
Yeah, we were really planning on having that as an annual event, and here it comes this year because of COVID. But next year will be soon enough, and we got many we're at the cusp of a new era with this new industry, you know.
Well, Jamie set together the digital hash bash broadcast this year. He really kind of engineered that whole thing too. And it was a response to the COVID situation, just like this is. We're taking a lot of things that we would normally do in person and running them digitally. I'll just say, as a reflection of this last 12 months, the digital hash bash was a huge success. Jamie Lowell, thank you. Thanks
Nice
for
job.
organizing that, and thanks for putting it on.
Definitely. Turned out great.
It was long enough ago that it was on Skype.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
we weren't even zooming back then, right?
Nope.
No.
I think we were. I was zooming.
Well, I mean, you're the decriminalized nature guy. I expect you to be zooming at all times, right? So
The kids were zooming, of course.
we have the top of Tim Beck's head. Yay! The top of Tim Beck's head.
Oh, and it just imploded.
It's back.
He's all in on legalization. I trust it. There he is. Hey, Tim. Welcome.
Hey, Tim.
Tim, you're on mute, sir. So go ahead and unmute yourself so you can speak with us.
Am I here? Am I
There he
heard?
is.
You are. Yeah, Berg says that Colin deserves praise for just putting up with us at Medical Mondays podcast. So, Colin, people are loving you, man. Tim, thanks again for joining us. I see Nick is here also. Nick Zettell,
God.
welcome.
Oh my God.
Nick looks like a member of the band Poison when they were actually in their prime time. Good job, Nick. Yeah. All right.
Oh,
Nick,
Poison
take yourself
at
off
prime
mute
time?
and speak so we can see you. You're on mute, Nick.
Sorry about that. How's everyone doing?
We're all great.
Yeah, wow.
Great. Great to see everybody.
And for those folks that may not know, Nick was, of course, a part of the MiLegalize as well. So was a very big part of the 2016-2018 campaign. And, of course, Mr. Beck that joined us, the godfather of cannabis law reform in Michigan, as he's referred to, did ballot initiatives in Detroit way before it was fun and passe to do those things. He was very successful, and it was Safer Michigan Coalition has helped to spur, almost 24 local initiatives, if not more, right,
It
Tim?
was, it was a good thing. It really worked out. Everybody was happy.
Well, but Tim, that you're speaking of it in the past tense, but the fact is, if someone wanted to do a ballot initiative on a local level and needed some guidance or advice, you'd still be available to help them with that. Wouldn't that be true?
Well, I would, but let me say this. I'm kind of like retired, and I mean that in a positive way. I'm not, a hardcore, activist, I haven't studied enough, the new dynamics about these, the ballot initiative process that was created by the legalization. So, but nonetheless, I think regardless of how you, mix the whole thing up, it's the local community that, really is in control. And if you're with the local community and they're your friend and in the privacy of the voting booth, you're going to win. It doesn't matter what the authorities say. On the other hand, usually these elected authorities, they kind of got it, they know what's going on. So, there's no guarantee result on anything. But sure, I talk to people call me, they contact me, but I'm not a current activist.
But there really are two areas in which, you really don't want to make a mistake. One is constructing your ballot language in a way that's going to pass muster. And second of all, making sure that your petitioners behave in a way that doesn't cause you grief or any legal challenge down the road. And in both of those areas, we have some assets that we can use to help people along. Sam Pernick this year, who was associated with the MiLegalize campaign and the Democratic Party, Sam helped like 7 or 8 of the successful ballot proposals that were just voted on November 3rd. So
I wish we knew more about it. Sam, I love Sam. I've had conversations with him. I was actually at my home in Grand Junction, Michigan for a fundraiser for Dana Nessel. He was working aggressively and effectively, for Dana. And he was a handler, for lack of a better term, and he came out to my place and he's a good guy. The only criticism, if you could use that term, that I had, he doesn't really share information very much. Maybe he does, maybe he has his own private friends, but you know, I mean, he's done some extraordinary things. I wish he would be less modest. Okay, that's the best way I can.
And we had him on
Yeah.
Jazz Cabbage a few weeks ago, and I really enjoyed that conversation because he's doing those local initiatives not as like a business trying to pave the way to come in, but more for like kind of righteous reasons and trying to create more social equity, you know,
Right.
opportunities and demonstrate to the locals so they can, you know, take advantage of this and, you know, ways that aren't always the way that it's done, you know, kind of more for pure reasons than typical. I thought that was a really cool conversation with them.
Yeah.
And they targeted places that passed by the bigger numbers.
Well, I know. Didn't he run? Correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't he run like 9 initiatives, or he was involved in them, or something like that?
I want
wish
to
we
say
knew
that like there was he said like 18 or something initiatives that he like tried to do, and I want to say that he got like 5 of them, and there were 8. I think there was 8 in November, but like 5 of them had to do with Sam or something. But he was telling us how hard it was, and like I remember him telling us about Pinckney, which is like a little village in Livingston County, and like they were like fighting him. They were like, no, you have to file it in the township that Pinckney's in, and the township was like, no, you have to file it in the village, and they were just like going back and forth. And I want to say that like I think he was talking about like some of them like actually had to go to court and stuff, and they're just
He still has ongoing legal challenges right now. So.
yeah,
Sure is.
for some of them that are still like ongoing, like of those 18.
So, and I appreciate us saying things like, you know, the rules are changing and we don't really know. The fact is sometimes even local clerks don't even know the right way to handle it. Or if they do, sometimes they're trying to avoid responsibility for something they don't want to handle by, you know, ditching it. In the example that Colin just spoke about, they actually took the petitions that Sam had turned in and put them on the curb. Actually took them out of the building and set them on the curb because they did not want to have received them legally. They were told by somebody they had to, so they went back out, picked them up off the curb, and brought them back into the building of the government building. But I mean, that's how bad these people want to avoid having cannabis on the ballot still in 2020.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I have an analogy here. You know, it ties in with, none other than Donald Trump. Okay. And oftentimes, you know, Trump often declares, oh, the voters they've been cheated. It's a fake election. It was all wrong. The communists were involved. Yeah, you know, on and on and on, non stuff, crap like that. And, you know, and I would say voter fraud does exist. And commonly it exists in these tiny municipalities, little areas where there's a dogfight for township supervisor, you know, and there's some kind of thing about the city council. Yes, you'll have trick stuff like Mr. Pernick is undergoing, you know, in these small towns. It gets really crappy where I think, you know, they'll do all kinds of stuff like leaving the boxes out on the curb. I believe that, you know, but when again, it's true. I don't think and Trump is, you know, kind of using this stuff to his own advantage. But bottom line, I'm saying that's where fraud occurs.
Yep. Well,
Really
Tim, I mean, let's let our viewers know when you fought the city of Detroit to get your ballot proposal on, they made you go all the way to the Supreme Court of the state of Michigan to force that issue on the ballot. So I know we just mentioned small towns sometimes don't understand. Sometimes big towns do understand exactly how to obstruct the process, don't they?
Well, they sure do, you know, and I think like we kind of broke the back of that. That was harsh. And we had to go all the way to the state Supreme Court.
You know, but there was a new set issue.
And that's a published decision, by the way. They cannot cite their own interpretation of the Constitution to keep you off the ballot. Right. That's a published case.
But that didn't stop them from taking a different avenue, like when the
I know there
were ordinances that subsequently passed that were just, you know, blown off. And
you got to fight in court.
It was challenged, right? And they didn't continue to challenge it through the higher courts. The people who were involved in fighting for a while just decided to drop off, just assuming probably didn't want to expend the resources anymore on it. I'm not sure, but
there was no trick voting in Detroit. There was no trick voting. They tried to keep us off the ballot, but there was no tricks in Detroit like Trump and what is going on with Sam. You know,
Yeah, and I mean, if you look at Detroit now, I mean, that ordinance was just like written, and I mean, that's like kind of like that same kind of like scenario where like the big cities, like they know how to like obstruct, as long as they can.
Hey, I'd just
They
like to
call that the
welcome,
machine.
just want to welcome Toby and our friend Brian Barger to the broadcast. Hi, guys. Thanks for participating in chat. Adam, you were about to say.
I say they call
Yeah,
that
you're
the
right about that,
machine
Colin.
when things happen like that in the election process. The fact that we have a hard time getting to the ballot doesn't surprise me. We're one of those groups that if they could make us go away, they would. And when they can't, they make it as hard as they can for us to get where we want to go. And the fact that we're in Michigan and have a ballot process is an awesome thing. We're all activists who talk to people all over the country, and they don't have this everywhere. And, my friends on the East Coast are all excited because New Jersey legalized, which means it's going to force the issue in neighboring states, not because those neighboring states want to legalize or want to be involved in the system, but they're all ready for it because they saw what happened in New Jersey. So,
And when the system does something half-assed because they really don't want to, they do it so poorly, it becomes dysfunctional. I mean, that's just the way it is. When they really don't want to change and you force them to, they mess with you.
and that's why the black market will reign supreme in the weed game forever, because it's been perfected over the last 100 years. And the reality is that they've got a long way to go to compete. So, it is what it is. I appreciate it for what it is. And it's a great thing. But unfortunately, most of the people involved in setting it up, not us, not you guys, but most of the people involved in setting it up have no concept of what weed, cannabis, marijuana, the scene, the style, the lifestyle, nothing is about. And because of that, we suffer.
Well, I'll tell you what, big business oftentimes turns and looks for scapegoats to explain why they're not being successful. And easy scapegoats are the unregulated market, an unfair regulatory system, name it. The state government is bad. The law was bad. You guys that drafted that law was bad. Everybody wants to make excuses for why they're failing. But the fact is you just suck at business because you don't understand your product or your consumer base. Sometimes that's the case.
I guess that begs the question, was that a shortcoming in the language, the local control? I mean, had that language not been in there, how many points would the proposal have lost?
I think I disagree with the concept that that's what causes people to be unsuccessful in business. When you see businesses of varying sizes successfully negotiating this landscape, but you only see the very big guys who grew too large, too fast, and have too many bills to pay off in a market that's uncertain and with price fluctuations that go up and down at whim. So I think if 98% of the people are successful and 2% of the people croak out, even if those are the biggest 2%, I think you can't blame the system.
I would say this, I kind of realize that.
I guess
Go on, Brad. It's all right. No?
I think he cut out something.
No, Brett.
I don't know where he went.
Yeah, Brad, go ahead.
No. I was not referring to big business so much. I guess I got lost in the conversation. I was talking more about the difficulties of the pulling off ballot proposals on a local level.
Yep. Well,
they're never easy.
So
they're never
do
easy.
you
Really,
think
seriously, we're going way back, to 2014, 12, 14, whatever. It was always a fight. I'll take that back. Pleasant, what do you call up north or central Michigan? Is
Mount Pleasant.
Mount Pleasant. That was an easy one. Everybody agreed. Oh my God, this crew. All we had to do was just put it on a ballot. No problem. Other places, oh my God, they like Port Huron. I mean, it was aggressive. It was vicious. Oak Park, for the love of God, we had to sue them. To get them to do the right thing. And it's flaky. I mean, it just, others, Ferndale, they were sort of used to it. And, Hazel Park, there were no problems. But it's the local.
So should the language in our proposal have been an opt-in statewide?
I'm
I
sorry.
think the language of the proposal was everybody's already in, and you have to opt out. That's how we wrote it.
Well, correct. That's right.
Until businesses actually tried to put that in play, and then the MRA said, "Oh no, wait a second.
Oh, no.
Oh no. Harump. Oh no. Let me, by the way, welcome Zara Abbas, yay. Mike McCurdy, both from the Cannabis Caucus, yay. Thanks for joining us today. Sam Pernick is on the chat too. We were just talking about you, Sam. And Wes Smith is also on the chat too. Thank you for joining us. And Toby Hopkins asks, what's the chance that the Congress will pass the cannabis bill, meaning the MORE Act? Anybody want to jump in on that?
Me. Absolutely
Mr. Hash
not.
Pass.
No, I'm taking bets. I'm willing to take bets. First of all, it'll never see a vote in the Senate. Second of all, what happened in the House of Representatives was historic for legislation, but it will find the same fate as other historic legislation because it won't have the support in the Senate. And the reality is, if any of you have read the MORE Act, you don't want it to pass either.
No,
You're
not the
happy
version that they passed.
That's right. You're happy it passed in the House of Representatives, and you're happy it's not going to pass in the Senate. And the reality is that if they ever bring it back in the next Congress, it will hopefully be a lot better and much more sane, because right now it just doesn't make sense on a few levels. And it's not even a bad law. It just doesn't make sense.
You got a sliding federal tax for cannabis that's between 5% and 8%. You've also got a prohibition against anyone that's ever been investigated for federal cannabis crimes from entering the marketplace as an owner and perhaps even as an employee. You've got monitoring programs that you have to enter into. And it's also, it doesn't really embrace the legalization concept. It maybe takes it off the schedule, but it doesn't open up freedoms. It doesn't really do the things we would want it to do. So the MORE Act maybe as a symbolic vote, yay, but as an actual act, I'm not really sure I would support it.
I would say this, Michigan legalizing pot 2 years ago had more influence on this country and weed law in the future than Congress, than the House of Representatives voting yes on the MORE Act, because we were the first Midwest state to go legal. We were a game changer out here. And what people don't understand is that this battle has been going on for so long that when it finally happened here, it meant that it could happen other places, and it was a game changer. This MORE Act, we know legalization is coming on the federal level, and the reality is at this point, most states really don't give a fuck, and they're giving the big FU to the federal government anyways. So shout out to the concept of hash bash.
There's a lot of people that would rather have things stay the way that they are right now than have the MORE Act provisions enacted.
I agree with Adam, though. Oh, sorry, Tim. Didn't mean to interrupt, but no,
I have a thought here. Don't be surprised by anything in politics. I'm just talking. I'm not. Maybe if I was so smart, I'd be in the U.S. Senate now. Okay, but I'm not. All right. But the point is, don't be surprised at anything. Don't be surprised that the Dems win in Georgia. A lot of people say that that's untrue. It's never going to happen, and so forth. But I wouldn't discount it. I would not discount it. We're living in crazy times. I don't even, I'm just going to years here, but hey,
along that whole don't discount it thing, Epen Thampy, who's got a national reputation in the cannabis industry, Epen wrote today on Facebook that he heard that McConnell is willing to bring up the MORE Act for a vote before the end of the year. Now I said, no way. But then I said, that source, that's not somebody that cries wolf. So you're right, Tim. I mean, almost anything is possible.
I heard from the same source, Rick. It's believable to me. And let me throw out another idea. I'll be really quick. I know, but there's this whole, there's this myth that the elections in Georgia were fake. They're a fraud. It was useless Trump supporters to vote for it. You know, whatever, you get the drift. But the bottom line now, it's coming back to bite those people in the rear end. And some Trump supporters say, hey, what the fuck? Why should I even vote on this? The elections are a fraud. So I'm not going to vote for these people. I'm sticking it out. I'm not voting for anything. Well, you know what? If a number of those folks do that, the Dems could take Georgia.
Yeah. And if we take both seats in Georgia, then that gives us a statistical advantage in the House of Representatives because the vice president would be the president of the Senate and therefore cast tie-breaking votes. Welcome to the broadcast. Welcome to the broadcast, Robin Schneider. Robin, of course, has been involved in the industry for a very long time. Originally started with Mac as she and Kevin as some of the original lobbyists in the state, and has evolved all the way through NPRA to her current position as probably one of the most powerful and most influential individuals in the cannabis industry in our state. Welcome to the broadcast, Robin.
Robin.
You're on mute. Powerful, strong individual.
There you go.
Happy anniversary. Happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary, everyone.
Well, I never thought I'd hear her say that to me.
Yeah.
Hey, Adam.
Yep. No. So
Good to
we've
see
seen a lot of friendly faces today. Thank you for joining us, Robin. You're not somebody we normally get on podcasts.
Well, I'm happy to be here.
The silver linings of COVID.
Yep. Well, in addition to the things that I just mentioned about Robin, she was also the instrumental piece of the puzzle regarding the marijuana policy project's connection here in Michigan with the MRTMA program. She was essentially the leader of that campaign and was the statewide agent. And I mean, that's the reason we got what we got. I mean, I'm looking around at some of the faces that we have here. I'm damn proud of all of us. And the people on chat too, by the way, Colleen, Sam, Berg, Toby, Amy Gassaway, thanks a lot for kicking in. Mike McCurdy too. Lots of love floating around with this anniversary today.
Oh, I remember the first one. It was a big deal, you know, over at Matt Abel's office, and people were getting high, and there were this shit. Detroit news reporters, all these ones with a sneer, and they're, you know, or some, you know, well, they're happy, but they weren't. And on the other hand, it was just so, you know, the freedom there. Hey, you know what? Get used to it. Fuck you. Yeah. I mean, Jerry, we won. You know, this is over. This is kind of just, you know.
Yeah, that was an incredible night at Matt's Cannabis Council. I remember when Rick, when you called it, it was you were announcing it to, you know, maybe, you know, 70 to 90 people crammed in one space. It was incredible.
Well, and I got, you know, we were all clustered around, and National NORML had put out a little blurb that said Michigan wins, and that was all I needed. You know, we already had been watching the numbers for hours after hours. We knew we were on the right track. So that was just the instigation. And you were right. I mean, we're blowing big doobies on Fox 2 as they're broadcasting live from that event. It was a lot of fun. I see Matthew Abel has joined us. He was also there.
Matt, we were just talking about Mr. Abel. Mr. Abel, you know, we were just talking about you just moments ago.
You're on mute.
We willed him to come on.
Yeah.
See, Robin? Everybody does it, Robin. Everybody does it.
I did it.
I knew I was on mute. I was going to go off a video too. I just wanted to have my name on the screen.
No,
Happy
we were just
anniversary, everybody.
happy anniversary to you too. Although we talked very fondly about that particular event at Cannabis Council on that night, there was a second celebration party too that Robin was leading. That was in Lansing. The Marijuana Policy Project and the CRMLA crew had an event there too, where they announced and they were celebrating as well. I mean, really, we did see just such a diverse collection of individuals with this movement. Wouldn't you say that's true, Robin?
Yes, in fact, so on election night, we had the non-cannabis party at the Radisson in Lansing. And the crazy thing was this. So Bill Schuette's campaign had rented like the space right next to us. And so all of the cannabis people and Bill Schuette's whole campaign were staying in the same hotel. And while we weren't smoking any cannabis in the hotel that night, the whole hotel smelled like cannabis. And so, so I remember like getting in the elevator and like it was a somber night for them, and we were like, yeah, like we were celebrating. At one point, people were accidentally walking into our party and being like, "Oh, is this Bill Schuette's party?" And we were like, "No, it's not." And so, like, it was a fun night. It was a fun night.
The opposite of Bill Schuette's party, you know, and that just add insult to injury. Bill Schuette has to smell cannabis, his vicious enemy cannabis, while he takes the biggest defeat of his political career.
It was pretty awkward. It was awkward.
All right, Tim's got a story.
I got a story, Robin. You were there that evening in Lansing. This other party I was referring to was at Matt Abel's place on, I think, December 6th back then. Bottom line, you know, I was at that party that Robin was at. I ran into Kevin Sabat and Scott Greenlee. Oh, yes. What a coincidence. I'm not making this shit up. You know, and they didn't really know who I was exactly. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't, but I knew who they were. And say, you guys doing all right? What do you think? You're gonna win this one? And they got it like, I really, hey, you guys are great. Oh, thank you. Yeah, they were really confused, and you know, they just holed up. You know, later on, listen to the news. They weren't partying, and then later on, all they could do the next day is denounce the thing and say they're going to file a lawsuit. That was pretty pathetic. Greenlee and you know, and Kevin. I mean, they look, and their few followers, their tiny group of followers, were going up to some hotel suite.
Yep.
And they were
Well, and Scott,
like riding it out.
For our viewers who may not remember, Scott Greenlee really hounded our campaign throughout the entire thing, went to all kinds of local communities trying to tell them about the evils of cannabis liberalization. He was in media constantly, funded on a national basis by Smart Approaches to Marijuana, Kevin Sabat's SAM project. But he really was, I mean, ever present. He was all over the place trying his very best. And then even after the election, he was still running around trying to tell people to make sure that they opted out of cannabis.
He had budgets to spend and salary to take. So that was just a money grab for him. I think that was pretty obvious. You know, Kevin Sabat just came out with the Anti-More Act piece. And the funny thing about it is I kind of agreed with him on all his points, that he pointed out all the bad parts of the More Act. So, you know, it was kind of interesting. But he's still out there running his mouth and obviously taking donations from somebody and getting a salary. And it's fascinating that these people, even in this era where states have all made their decisions, and, you know, where's he hanging his hat? What study is he?
Yeah, he doesn't have many successes lately.
I think I know him. Okay.
I just wonder what study he's carrying around. That's all. What's he got? Go.
Okay, well, what his deal is, he's a, I'm not going to use the word fanatic. He's a religious guy, is a kind of spiritual course with the Baha'i religion. I know this sounds like a conspiracy theory. I've repeated many times in my life, and everybody ignores it. Okay, but no, the guy, it's a religious thing. The Baha'i community across the world, it comes from Iran, and it proclaims itself to be both Christian and Islamic, you know, at the same time. Go up to Wapak, you know, Wilmette, Illinois, and see their place. And they're very highly educated. They have their own kind of world vision, and Kevin is their spear carrier. That's my theory. That's where he gets his money, you know. And of course, he's good at fundraising, and you know, other people give money to him because it's just so great. I hate that. Fuck that marijuana. Fuck that shit. You know, I mean, again, I'm exaggerating here, but that's what I think his deal is. I mean, I don't hate him. I don't love him.
I'd believe that if he's well known in their community, he's pulling big money out of that community.
Yep, and they would be able to.
I mean, you don't even have the big alcohol companies supporting that crap anymore.
Well, Baha'i is a totally prohibitionistic thing in the sense
I understand that.
So-called drugs, period. Alcohol. It doesn't mean, you know, everything.
I agree with Tim that I don't think Kevin Sabet is as much of a mercenary or hired gun as, say Scott Greenlee. And I think that he's probably true to, his prohibitionist stance in that I don't think he's going to, end up lobbying for, on behalf of a cannabis business in the future when his smart approach is inevitably goes belly up or something of the sort. Just like we've seen, other oppositional figures end up working for the big money entities like Senator Randy Richardville. It kind of comes to mind, and there have been other Senator Rick Johnson, I think even. So yeah, there's been a lot
Boehner's
of
working in our space, isn't he?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yep. Hey, I've got a question here from the chat. Sam Pernick says for Robin Schneider, thank you for your work. What can be done to strengthen the MRTMA language to allow for broader local petitioning? Sam, of course, is hot on making some adjustments to petitioning language. As we talked about today, sometimes it's difficult to get them done, but more importantly, once you successfully pass a petition, local communities can change it at will. Robin, is there anything we can do within the MRTMA language in order to address that issue?
Well, I have heard this concept, and I know like the goal was that it was going to be administrative fixes only. So I guess my question on that would be, is that an administrative fix only that could be, easily put into an existing project, or does it take a standalone bill and a good and motivated sponsor? That'd be my answer.
Welcome to the chat, Gus Rosania, Wes Smith, Mike McCurdy's been active. Thank you. Colleen Keys, Brian Barger says he's in Detroit. Yep. Gus reminds us there's lots of money in promoting fear. One of the things that our legalization proposal has done over the last couple of years is taken away a lot of that fear. Local communities, maybe not as many as we want, but a lot of local communities have said yes to businesses on a medical or a legalization proposal. And we're seeing nowadays when we walk into some of these city council meetings, there's usually one or two people on council that's rabidly in favor of our proposal. Whereas in the past, I mean, you had tepid responses or people that supported kind of kept it to themselves. They were afraid of screwing up their own situation. So I think we are eliminating fear. However, there's an awful lot of forces out there trying to reinforce that fear, to say things like caregivers are bad and we need to raid them some more, and we need higher testing standards, or we need tougher manufacturing protocols in order to make sure that everything is safe. A lot of that is oftentimes just a lot of fluff and nonsense used by big business to try and squeeze little business out.
Right. And that's part of the issue with these legislature type folk who don't know the game. So they allow this outside influence to come in and tell them that, we need these testing standards, or we need this, or we need this supply chain thing, or we need it this way. And well, because they're in the industry, these legislatures look at them as the experts, and they say, oh, well, if that's what this industry needs, well, that's what we'll give you. And there's nobody saying, well, wait a minute here. That's not really how this really works. I mean, you could work it that way, but let's educate you on the whole process. And that's where, to be honest, people like Robin were game changers in our scene and took our movement to the legislature and helped create the industry. I mean,
and now that we have that, by the way, the Michigan Cannabis Industry Association, more than 200 members, the West Michigan Cannabis Guild, also more than 200 members. We have a pretty strong base of folks. And Robin tells me that even some of our members have their own lobbyists as well. So there are multiple voices, I think, singing the right song in Lansing now, whereas in years past, it was a solo act. Robin and the nobodies.
We couldn't hire a lobbyist. We couldn't hire a lobbyist in the past.
Well, Robin, it happened. I think it happened. And Robin was on the cutting edge. He was the tip of the spear. Okay.
Right.
And he deservedly got funding. Everybody won. Okay, with this, there was controversial things that had to be done. Some of the people in the community didn't agree with some of the deals that were made, and so on and so forth. But who in the hell else is going to do it? He stood up at that time in history. At least in that arena.
So I just want to say there were a lot of bumps in the road through that whole process. And, you know, Kevin McKinney, our lobbyist, did an amazing job, you know, of navigating that. And it didn't turn out perfect. And as we saw with the board, you know, there were some things slid in the 11th hour by business lobbyists that turned out to be, you know, bad. And luckily we got to go back to the drafting table and rewrite MIRTMA and correct a lot of those things that happened, you know, with the new initiative, which is why we're so protective of it. So, yeah.
I think it's this time for us to talk about the other Kevin that was in that conversation, Kevin McCarthy, who is a financier. Kevin was on the board of directors of MiLegalize and really wanted to remain in the background. He was a calm voice during a time when MiLegalize sometimes was a very raucous board to be on, but also he ponied up a ton of money for the 2016 campaign, and when that was unsuccessful, he was so pissed off he ponied up money and did it again for the 2018 campaign. And when CRMLA needed petitions, you know, to be approved, he was there with a financial donation. I know that Jeff Hank calls him the single largest financial donor to the successful legalization campaign. I think that's a fair way to say it. And this is a person who toiled in anonymity intentionally. In a time when people are all like me, all ego driven and love to see their face everywhere, you know, you see a guy who has an Al Kaline kind of an attitude towards it, right? Remember Al Kaline turned down that big contract because nobody deserves that kind of money?
You know, Kevin, I don't know. Is he listening in on this? I see his name.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that's him.
Yeah, it's him. So
No.
I just want to say one thing. So, you know, my job with the campaign was the finance director, and it was, you know, horrible. And, you know, I learned how to walk into rooms and say, I need $1 million, and, you know, be happy if I walked out of there with a check for, you know, $1,000. I mean, that was what it was. And it was a lot of ass. And so, you know, Kevin, thank you. You know, I mean, that what you did was huge. It was greatly needed. And the other thing that I'm really grateful for with Kevin is he balanced out, you know, he balanced the coalition in a way that the language turned out good. You know, it really was a huge coalition and a community effort. And there were times along the way that Kevin held us accountable to do the right thing. And, you know, I mean, I really appreciate that.
Bravo.
So many.
Bravo.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kevin. And thank you, Robin.
Yep. I mean, there are some people that know some stories. I don't think there's anybody that knows all the stories except for Kevin himself. And here's the thing, after legalization, he just went back to being himself because he didn't do it for glory. He did it because he totally believed in it. I don't even know if Kevin consumed cannabis, to be honest with you. I don't think he does, but
Well,
I mean,
I'll be honest.
Love it.
We all have our part. Kevin played one of the most important parts because there's a linchpin in what we do, and we can all get together and we can decide that we want to move forward and we can decide all kinds of things, but if we can't pay for it, it doesn't happen. And that's no bullshit. That's reality. And the reality is that some people's place in life is putting up that money. And you can't thank them enough because they'll work a lot harder than you ever ask them to. That's the point.
Kevin McCaffrey really from Ann Arbor really, I think I maybe saw him interviewed one time in a publication, maybe, and that was it. He's, you know,
I didn't. Okay.
I wouldn't recognize him if he walked up to me. I wouldn't know who he is.
I did an online
search
of the guy. I did an online search of the guy. Okay, back in the early days. All right, and yeah, you know, he's a successful entrepreneur from West Virginia. You know, he knows how to make money. He gets the picture. He moved out here. It was a romantic thing, okay, from what I understand. So he came to Michigan, and you know, he just heroically stepped up. Heroically,
yeah, Kevin, if you ever do want to make a public appearance, we've got a space for you at Hatchback.
Definitely.
We were at a MiLegalize event for the 2016 campaign in Ann Arbor, and he showed up there and was listening to the program and what was going on, and that's what
just a wonderful person. And that's why I wanted to make sure I mentioned him as we were talking about some of the people who are responsible for us being where we are. I mean, we can spend all day talking about what the future may hold, and we can even spend a little bit of time arguing about what the past had, you know, because history is subject to perspective. But there are certain things that we have to reach agreement on, and that Kevin's an #1 super dude. That's
absolutely. And I think he might be listening. And Kevin, if you are listening, I want to apologize if I ever mentioned your name in public, because I got pretty excited and I know you wanted to remain low key. So please forgive me. But thank you, because I mean, you know, if somebody wants to be fairly anonymous, I mean, you can't completely because of the campaign finance reports, but that doesn't mean that we have to shout it from the rooftops either. So I hope I didn't contribute to any angst on your end. And thank you for sticking with us in spite of all that.
NORML recognized Kevin as like Activist of the Year in 2016 or 2017 or something like that, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Maybe. Yeah, that was
Deservedly so. Absolutely.
Well, I'm fantastic to get an opportunity to say those nice things about Kevin. I see the Reverend Stephen Thompson has joined us, although not by visual and not by audio. But if we talk about another guy who put in the time, right, who earned his chops, the Rev, you know, for a lot of years was the guy in the Northland, right? He's the only guy out there. And what about those global marijuana marches that he's been holding in Traverse City for like 20 years now? You know, just an amazing record of activism and advocacy. And I don't know, I think Steve's trying to talk to us in chat. I got to check that out. But
and he got Benzoni or something to opt in, and he's still at it strong. He's got his NORML chapter that's been the longest meeting chapter as far as I can tell. And thank you, Reverend Steve.
Yeah. I mean, this is a NORML broadcast, even though it's really just a community broadcast. But on behalf of NORML and the current board of directors, you know, we owe a big debt of gratitude. I know Tim Beck, a former director, executive director of Michigan NORML, Matt Abel, current executive director, Stephen Thompson, former executive director. So we've got a bunch of real stalwarts from the industry here tonight.
You know, this is so funny. You know, really, seriously, the only old timer I'm missing right now is Larry Bonner Lippert. I know some old timers remember Bonner. Okay.
Of course.
And there you go. Thank you. I wish he was here right now. Maybe he's listening in. And
you know, I gotta say, I really would have enjoyed watching Bonner on social media during the last 4 years.
Oh my God.
Boy, that would have been some great social media.
Man, he was extraordinary. He really got the message across from grassroots folks. I mean, he was scary. You know, to some people in a positive way. I mean, you know, it was, he was
scary, but in a positive way, like that uncle, right? Like that one uncle of yours. I just want to say, hey, we have both of the Medical Mondays guys on chat now. Romeo Roach is on. Jaron Sage from Flint, thank you for joining us too. We also have Amy and Laith Al-Sadi. Laith, thank you for joining us on the broadcast as well. Good job, everybody. You know, the MORE Act brings up a lot of questions about where we're at, but let's talk about another current issue, expungement, and trying to free those people that are currently incarcerated. We have a big one right now, Michael Thompson, and we're trying very hard to get him out. He had a parole board hearing I testified at to try and get him released. You know, we still have work to do, y'all.
Well, and maybe he'll get out by Christmas, you know?
Well, I mean, the fact is, even if the parole board in the December meeting said that they would grant him parole, there's still paperwork and such. It takes several weeks to go through before they're actually able to let you out of the poke. So,
no, I don't know. I think Gretchen could do it if she wanted to. Okay, I mean, she's already taken charge of so many things in the state. Yeah, I mean, she could tell you, you know, who you can stay with and where you go and, you know, this and that. Okay, now I'm being a little over the top because it's not enforceable for me. All right. But, you know, I mean, why couldn't she just sign a fucking paper? All right. Trump will do that. Hey, mark my words. Trump is going to be signing a lot of pardons before he leaves office.
Well, let's not use that as a standard of behavior someone should emulate, though. Okay? Let's just
does anybody know where I can buy one?
Yeah. I know a couple guys in Michigan that would like to get their cannabis convictions pardoned, and maybe Trump could help out with that. I don't know, but
we ought to send them a list. We really ought to send them a list.
Yeah.
A federal pardon, Michigan federal.
State. I think we're talking state pardon.
No,
no, I'm wrong. I'm sorry.
Federal.
Staple a $5 bill to it. He'll do anything for money. Shit.
Are you kidding?
I get it.
But it might be an opportunity for us to highlight some of that injustice and maybe make a difference there as well.
Yeah.
Michael Thompson's in on a state charge, so Trump couldn't pardon him, but there are people. Isn't Danny Trevino's case federal?
Yeah.
Danny just announced today or yesterday that he's got a hearing coming up in January as well.
I think Ryan Bass
in Sixth Circuit in Cincinnati.
I mean, Ryan, our good friend Ryan. It's possible something could work out for him. I'm speculating, of course.
Yeah, Jerry Duvall. I was just about to say, he's up in somewhere in Massachusetts, I think. But we really need to get him out.
Yeah. Well, we just saw Richard DeLisi, who was the longest-serving cannabis prisoner in Michigan or in the United States, I believe. Richard DeLisi just received clemency from the Florida group. I know Jamie and I just had Stacy Theus on our show. She was headed down there to go with Kristen to see Richard and get him out of jail. So Michael Thompson now, once he's out, I think Michael qualifies as the longest-serving person in the United States of America on a cannabis-related crime. So our efforts that way are going to be good too. Jerry Duvall, it's really sad. When we talked to Ashley when we talked to Stacy, yeah, she mentioned to us that every time we tried to get attention for Jerry to try and promote the fact that he needed clemency because of his illnesses, the prison system treated him worse, and they would throw him in solitary confinement, and they would do reprehensible things, every time we mentioned him. So they just stopped talking about him.
Do people believe that doesn't happen in the prison system? Because that's what the prison system's all about. It happens to everybody. Yeah. I mean, I hate to say I was there and saw it, but you would not believe that all the stories we hear are true. Imagine the stories we don't hear about the people who have nobody, who are trying to write their own briefs and trying to get things taken care of. And then there's retribution because the prison is its own world and nobody has any clue what happens there. It's crazy.
Yeah. And we, as the most industrialized nation of the world, we not only tolerate that, we pay for that to happen.
Right.
I can say it's an arbitrary world, very, very highly arbitrary. I'm not bragging here.
But right, it is, but we have good reason to be hopeful right now. Finally, the U.S. took action to pull it off as a one. I think that's going to happen. I think there's a good chance it'll happen. That there was the subcommittee that drafts the drug put in, and the vote was close. It was like 26 to 24 of the nations. And my knowledge of this is not thorough, but they're recommending that in the next worldwide drug treaties, whatever those are, that cannabis be taken out of the schedules. Mm-hmm. And that'd be huge. And it could happen just in a couple of months, I believe. And
because the U.S.
it'll make a difference. A lot of countries just care about hemp. They're about the industry and hemp and all that. And federally, now we've got the Republicans who voted against the MORE Act, and we know who they are and they're on record. They can't weasel anymore saying, well, I'll address that issue when it comes up. And so I think it's fair to use that as a political and to try to get some pro-cannabis people in there, primary them with other Republicans.
How about the Democrats?
Republican district, and you're not. All the Democrats voted for the MORE Act.
No, Michigan. They didn't. No, from Michigan, yeah.
From Michigan. I'm just talking about I can't conquer the whole world all at once.
All right.
You know, but I mean, in the smaller community, and the interesting thing here too is that districts are going to be reapportioned by the new Michigan Reapportionment Commission, which is going to be nonpartisan. And once it cuts districts that aren't designed to favor one party over the other, those entrenched people in both parties become a lot more vulnerable to people who are moderate. And so I think this next election is a huge opportunity because, you know, incumbents have a lot of power and don't often get defeated. But so in these districts, which the demographics are going to be completely different, there's some opportunities here. And I think we ought to get a committee together of people that are going to work on this on a bipartisan working group and on a one issue, just like any other one issue, the NRA or right to life, or whatever, and primary those fuckers. I've had enough, God damn it. Been smoking weed for 45, 47 years now. Come on already.
It's a quote of the day. I've had enough, God damn it. That's the quote of the day. So far. We're still expecting some additional guests to join us at some point, so keep an eye out for some other celebs as we progress on this evening's broadcast. Thanks again, Mike McCurdy. We are speaking his language, and he says, Michigan will grow blue. Jessica Finch, board member, Michigan NORML, thank you very much for joining us on the chat in this broadcast today. Lots of folks out there that are watching and participating one way or another. I mean, really, we have come a long way, but you can't do hardly anything without the legislature. And the legislature in this state just does not favor our subject to a great degree. I mean, the expungement bills were a nice thing, but I think we'd all agree that the cannabis version of the expungement bills fell short. Jamie Lowell, would you explain to our viewers a little bit about how the cannabis version of these expungement bills maybe fell a little short of our expectation?
Yeah, I will very briefly. And also to let you know that I think Reverend Steve might be able to join the discussion here in a minute. Okay. Yeah, so just in the cannabis part, it claims to allow for expungement for cannabis activity that was allowable as of, the implementation date 2 years ago, but it falls short of actually allowing for all that activity. It allows for expungement for possession and use, and adults are also allowed to grow and to transfer it. So the other parts were not included. It also limits it to misdemeanors, and none of it's automatic. That said, the package of bills itself obviously was a great step forward. A really great improvement for a lot of people. So not to diminish any of that, but the cannabis part of it was relatively weak.
Well, I think we felt the same way about the asset forfeiture bills that were passed a few years ago, too. That was a bipartisan effort, which we have to appreciate and applaud. Oftentimes, Republicans don't like to take money away from cops, but in that instance, they did, although it didn't go as far as we wanted to. And at the time, I believe we were told things like, well, we'll fix it later. Let's just pass this right now. We'll fix it later. Well, it's quite a bit later, and no fix has yet to come. So
if we have other priorities, we have other priorities. We need tax policy reform. We need to protect guns. We need to help people in poverty. This marijuana. Oh, what the shit? What are you talking about?
Always.
Don't forget, we already took care of the sick people. They're already being taken care of. Right. So we can wait now. The sick people are getting their medicine.
Yeah. I'd like to welcome Joshua to the chat, too. Thank you, Joshua, for joining us. Mike McCurdy said we can win primaries, but I originally read it to say we can win primates. And I originally thought of a big purple monkey that you'd win at a county fair by throwing baseballs at some milk jugs or something like that. So I don't think I'm allowed to say milk jugs on the air. I'm not sure.
Yes, you are. You are.
Okay. All right. Okay, good. Just checking out.
Steve,
John Slicker.
Let's see if Rev Steve can chime in now that he's.
I'm on here, Jamie, and I think I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
We can. Hey, Rev.
Hey, Steve.
Good to see everybody's high faces on here. I wish I had a camera so you could see mine. But it's good to see everybody.
Were you able to hear us talking about you a few minutes ago when we were telling everybody, you know, some of your accomplishments and how you've been one of the pillars of the community?
I think that's when I was trying to switch over to audio with the phone number, and Jamie put it on for me. I did hear you mention I was on chat, and I thought, well, I'm going to, this phone's got a full charge. I'm going to try to go to audio so that I can at least talk to everybody.
Well, thank you for doing that. And thanks for your continued advocacy. I mean, throughout the decades, the northern Michigan area is not always comfortable to advocate cannabis in. That's some hostile environment at some points. But, you know, you've been able to do it. You've also been able to do it in a unique way because you use scripture sometimes in order to help make your point with people who want to take issue with cannabis.
Yes, I do, Rick, because it's for those that call themselves or identify themselves as Christian and then say that cannabis is a bad thing. Oh my gosh, they're going against the very God they say they believe in, because if you look in the first book of Genesis, he created this plant for our use. And then if you go to the 4th chapter of 1 Timothy, they warn us that in the latter days there'll be those idiots that come along and that claim to be Christian and yet tell us that we can't marry certain people or that we can't eat certain meats. And that includes cannabis, because in Genesis, that's exactly what God called it. He said it was for our use as meat.
Well, and Colleen Keys, by the way, writes in chat, "Hi, Reverend, would just love you." I will say that your point is well taken. Even if one doesn't follow scripture, the fact that we have to speak to our audience in a language that they understand and appreciate is important. And I know that many times Jamie and I know Robin's gone to places, other folks too, where you go to somewhere and you have to change the way that you would normally present information because of the group that you're presenting to. And it doesn't mean that you're being disingenuous with the data. What it means is that you're speaking in a way that can be appreciated by the people that are listening to you. So I would speak differently at a Michigan NORML meeting than I would at a Republican, North Oakland County Republican group, right? So, Robin, I mean, that's your experience too, right? You have to appeal to people in a language they can appreciate.
Yes, you have to know how to quickly read the room as you're walking in the door. Reverend Robin, I just want to say I miss you and love you and hope you're staying warm up there.
Yep. So that was for Rev, the miss you and love you. That was for Reverend.
Reverend Steve, it's Robin. Can you hear me?
Hey, Robin, it's good to see your smiling face, hon.
I miss you. I wish I could give you a hug.
Hey, I wish I could too. I'll tell you, that's the hardest part about this COVID stuff is because you know me, I'm a hugger. And so it's hard not to hug, and it's definitely hard not to share a doobie with somebody.
In our circles, that is sort of challenging. We do enjoy the social aspect of cannabis consumption, and you know, sometimes Jamie Lowell and I will refer to it as Chuck reaming it as
I was just about to say.
As everybody gets their own joint in the circle and just pounds it down without sharing. Although Chuck reaming it doesn't really sound right. Those people that know the man know what I'm talking about. Those that don't, whatever.
Like at the very first MiLegalize meeting was at Third Coast in Ypsilanti, I remember, and Chuck had invited, 40, 45 people, and he made sure there was a hog leg size joint on every seat. And it was really, a great way to start things off. I think it was, January or February of 2015.
It was very welcoming. It was a very welcoming atmosphere.
January. It was a thing. He was normally
like, oh, come on.
He normally would do this at his house, but it was, as you said, it got up to 40, 45 people, so he needed a little bit of bigger space.
I have been to several meetings.
The hotel room at in Okemos, we rented a big conference room in Okemos when they did the board elections. Remember? The original board elections for MiLegalize. It was in Okemos at the conference center. That was awesome.
Yeah.
Yep. I've been to several meetings at Chuck's house. He has a nice little crystal bowl he puts out and joints continually all the way around. So it's the most beautiful flower, right? You almost hate to take one out of it, but yeah, you take one out of it anyway.
Well, he'd be insulted. I mean, he almost wants a sacrifice for him, you know, to see people just
really
grabbing joints. And he gets concerned, but again, he's not concerned. He's even happy.
Yep. Chuck's a good guy. Chuck, for those people that may not know, Chuck is Tim's partner in Safer Michigan Coalition. Chuck's been involved in a ton of local elections. He's been doing this for a very, very long time. And, you know, oftentimes in Ann Arbor, he's still influential with city council. I know that Colin oftentimes mentions how important it was to get decriminalized nature Ann Arbor passed. And Chuck was very helpful because he was able to negotiate council chambers.
The guy is a magician. Really, he's a magician. And he's done other stuff, not just cannabis. He came up, I'll never forget it. It was just maybe less than half a dozen people defeated this prison, you know, this prison, you know, this a renovation of the Washtenaw County Jail. And it was really some big dollars and on and on. So, well, Chuck decided to lead a crusade. No giant jail. You know, there was about 5 of us and put lawn signs out and made some phone calls, and the voters said no. On a tax increase or no expansion, but this was Chuck's brainchild. I mean, he came up with this. He just he's
well. Gus,
he's great. You know.
U of M professor Gus Rosania says Chuck is brilliant, which is awesome. John Schlicker says love you, Reverend Steve. Nobody says love you, Rick. I don't understand what that is. John Schlicker also says Third Coast rocks. True, John. Way to go. There are a couple of places in our history in the medical era. Okay, I can't speak to before the medical era, but during the medical era, a couple places that really were hubs of knowledge, hubs of free will and thinking. Third Coast in Ypsilanti, Cannabis Council in Detroit was a place you could always count on to be able to host a meeting, an event, or a serious discussion where you needed to get leaders together in a chamber where they could all yell at each other and it would be okay. So those locations, they still matter. And frankly, Cannabis Council is still rocking it as a law firm. And Third Coast, although it's changed into Oz, it's still a cannabis distribution center. So they've been able to stand the test of time.
Love you, Rick.
Oh, thank you, Rev. Oh, I begged for that. Thank you. Nice. I feel good.
Look forward to hosting those events, soon in the future.
Thank you. Of course, Tom Lavigne said, look forward to hosting the events in the future, too.
Absolutely.
Yep. Well,
organizing.
Some of us thought maybe there'd be less.
Ranked choice vote might be an important thing. It's kind of an interesting thing. They adopted it in San Francisco. Where a third person has a better chance. Like you put who you would vote for, your first choice and your second choice. So out in San Francisco, they had a leader, and then there was a number 2 and a number 3 started campaigning together, saying, "Vote, put me as your first choice and her as your second, or vice versa." So then, when it came down to it, the leader was there, and then the voters who were supporting the number 3 choice then goes over to the other candidate, and it can change the result that way. So it's kind of an interesting.
Well, I think there'll be a lot of action in Detroit on the cannabis front, since they've just adopted some new proposals for adult use businesses, which are relatively controversial. And then also looks like the city is really trying to adopt a pro-hemp stance too, perhaps to use some of their available properties for hemp production, either industrial or agricultural. So that's intriguing as well. Lots to talk about within the cannabis sphere. Plus, there's just so many things happening. The Native American tribes up in the Upper Peninsula, the Bay Mills group specifically, starting their own independent cannabis industry, separate and distinct from the marijuana regulatory agency. The state's incredibly dynamic. it's quite an exciting time to be in this industry. Don't you agree?
Yes.
No, I agree. I mean, there's a lot of levels. I'm seeing, you know, I can't see how anybody can go wrong unless they're really stupid. There's a lot of wealth, you know, to be shared here. You know, a lot of opportunities for entrepreneurs and creative thinking people. And
What?
You know, you can see it all across. And that's just, I think the hemp in Detroit. I mean, and you know, these areas that are environmentally devastated. Hey, come on, think about it. You know, there's ideas scattered all around. Get it growing. That'd be good guerrilla action or whatever the hell.
Robin?
Yeah, I want to share my favorite memory of Reverend Steve. So back in the early days, there was a fundraiser at the bar by U of M where they had Hash Bash. What was the fundraiser? The pizza place. What was that place called? Dominic's. And we were up on the patio, and he brought a pipe from, was it Raleigh that made the pipe, Reverend? From
Yes.
Farms.
Raleigh made the pipe for me.
And he was gonna auction that off, and he was gonna give the money to MiLegalize. And I just thought to myself, that's the nicest thing, because he was very emotional about the pipe. So anyway, we made sure he left with that pipe that night, and I told him, don't ever do that again.
Yeah, I mean,
Good for you, Robin.
But
Yeah.
And I still have that
Oh,
pipe.
yeah.
you better.
I still have that pipe, and I have a few water bongs from Rainbow Farm that I display proudly here in my office.
nice.
No, it's just such a really meaningful gesture, and it's just the kind of person you are, you know. And I just remember thinking, he can't seriously give the pipe away. I mean, but you're just such a generous person and always have been.
Well, I sure appreciated that time that you made the special trip up to the Benzie Dems and dropped the signs off to me, and you and your daughter stayed for a little bit of the meet. Everybody was really happy to get to meet you and know you, and it meant a lot up here. Same way when Rick and Jamie come up, you know, and it meant a lot. And I, you know, too, while we're on the subject, I owe Rick and Jamie a heartfelt thanks for Northport, because they came up here on their own dime. They went to Northport and showed them why it would be a good thing for them to opt into the business, and it got put on the ballot and let the people decide, and I feel that Rick and Jamie had a lot to do with us winning that at this last election. So there is going to be a dispensary in Northport.
Thank you. Thanks for saying that. You know, Don Bailey and a former DEA agent were both at that hearing, and Don tried to come after me, and it didn't work well for him. So,
Fuck Don Bailey.
What was this, Rick? That sounds
I
really
agree,
fucked
Adam.
up. Okay, yeah, that sounds fucked up.
well,
That he's still doing
well,
that.
so here's the thing.
The board was completely over with everything. He's still showing up at meetings and trying to work against it, and then claiming that we were getting paid to be there. You know, was not.
He was the one getting paid to be there.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if he had been getting paid to be there. He's retired from MSP, so he's allowed to collect a second income. It would be legal for him to do so. There'd be nothing illegal about it. So I wouldn't be surprised if someone did pay him to do that. But you know, he tried to change the subject from cannabis. We'd already beaten all of his arguments in cannabis. Then he started to assail me, saying how I was a poor representative of the community because I attended non-sanctioned events, and I went to unregulated marijuana dens, and I fraternized with those people and all that stuff. He tried to attack my character, and I
Hey, I got a secret. I got a secret, everybody. He did the same thing to me, Rick. That was his exact tactics. It's I think it's a common technique from some people that don't get it.
As someone,
the message, beat the messenger.
As someone who sees you at those unregulated events, Rick, my point to a guy like that is, who cares? We won, dude. It's over. Are you really getting to the point that you're going to assail who we are?
If you can't beat the message, you got to attack the messenger. That's the only tactic you've got left. And
Tell that to the believers in Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Ad hominem.
I mean,
thank you,
you
Tom.
can't attack the messenger.
Fallacial.
You blow up the message when you attack the messenger.
Okay, so I guess it really is it demonstrates a weakness of your perspective, and you've run out of logical.
All right. Well, just to finish this up, Bailey's working for Kevin Sabat.
You think Bailey's working for Kevin?
Okay, next subject.
No.
He ought to go get a job there.
He's working for Kevin.
No, that's just a rumor. I made that shit up.
Maybe indirectly. He maybe is being manipulated by Kevin Sabat, who's just planted a microbe.
Right.
Bailey
It is a rumor, but I made it up. Is that fair? I like to make up rumors. It's really effective sometimes if you pick your target properly.
Well, you're an attorney, so if anybody wants a hassle, you can defend yourself, right? I mean, it's kind of a built-in protection mechanism. I see Tom smiling over there. Tom's like, I let Matt say it, and I just defend his ass. So it's a good duo.
Well,
Bailey,
you gotta be
Bailey
careful because
hearing. I'm sorry. The way Bailey behaved himself at that hearing,
lawyers
putting that who the townspeople believed. Did they believe Billy or did they believe Rick and Jamie?
Well, and the fact is, the township invited us up, or we were invited by one of the township members to give a presentation, and it was sort of after our presentation that the quote-unquote heckling sort of thing happened. So, but
the city of Sheboygan has 6 recreational licenses because of Rick and Jamie. I'd like to thank them as well.
Thank you for saying so, Brad. Sheboygan was an interesting place to talk to people for. You know, we've done it. We've been all over the place. Where's Nicole Braden? Where's she from? That's the Pink. Yeah. I mean, we've talked so many places.
But I think you too. Yeah, you know, you're very good. You know, in these communities. I mean that respectfully, very, very respectfully, because you bring a nuance that some of these people have never heard of before. You know, it kind of gets them thinking, and they start questioning the system. And you planted the seed, and then they get, you know, it gets done. It gets done.
Now, let me explain too, though, that it's not just Jamie and I running around and doing things. The whole MiLegalize group, the MRTMA folks went all over the place. Almost everywhere Scott Greenlee went, one of us from one of the different organizations was there to counter that argument. Plus, most of the individual business persons that compose the Michigan Cannabis Industry Association, they've had to make individual personal pitches to their own city councils. So the message is coming from so many different sources. I think it's really an amazing thing. People that have just activist interest, people that have business interest. Sam Pernick, who just apparently likes to just sue the shit out of people. I guess
we're usually like a piece of the puzzle, you know, with a larger effort, and it works out pretty well. Can't really take credit, as Rick's saying, for it.
Well, I would say everything that gets done is there's been a huge grassroots coalition behind all of it, and the fun thing is that, you know, we have a lot of members who, you know, started out as caregivers and activists and, you know, worked really hard and got their licenses, but they still have that. They're once an activist, always an activist, and now they're activists and business people. And, you know, I appreciate them so much because they seem to remember where they came from and empower me to do good things. And you know, our members hold each other accountable, but a lot of them were there working on the campaign, like Anquinette, and you know, a lot of people involved that were on the front lines of all of that just, you know, went into business later.
Yep.
So, but without them, without the more activists and everybody working together and not arguing, you know.
Getting 5 cities to adopt medical early on to let the national organizations know that Michigan was ready to go statewide.
Yeah.
Here's two names that also need a little bit of accolade when we start talking about the last 10 years in Michigan: Greg Schmidt and Eric Van Dusen. Greg Schmidt is an attorney from the Saginaw area who has authored or helped author many different local ordinance languages and proposals and petitions. He was there for the PRA way back when, an old hand in this whole issue here. And he also is another one, much like Kevin McCaffrey, who's decided not to take a front and steady approach, but has still been available as a resource throughout the years. Eric Van Dusen from Traverse City, not only is a part of the media there, directing positive stories when it comes to cannabis industry, also suing the Court of Appeals over the right to be able to film their proceedings, standing up for local communities even when nobody there was interested. He still was the voice of reason throughout all that time. I mean, Rev Steve's done an awful lot in the Northland too. Eric is another person, and his attorney that he works with, Williams, Jesse Williams.
Jesse Williams. Yeah.
Yep.
And Eric,
He's been around quite a while, Jesse.
sounds good boy.
What's that, Stephen?
Eric's a Benzie County boy.
Yeah. Yep.
He grew up in school with my kids.
Yeah. So, I mean, we can talk about a lot of folks that actually helped us along. Bill Leitner from the Free Press. Kathy Gray, also from the Free Press.
Christine Landino. And I was thinking also
Melody
Mike
Carr.
Whitty.
Yep, Dr. Detroit.
We didn't mention him.
Oh yeah.
Melody Carr.
I would say Ben Horner. Ben Horner is.
You know what's going to happen? We're going to forget to mention somebody they're going to be really upset tomorrow.
But true, Robert points out thousands of people over several years. That's
well, I will say I was really hoping to see Jeff Hank on here. He was the executive director of MiLegalize, and really had a big role in spearheading that entire effort, as well as some local efforts in Lansing and East Lansing that were successful early on.
I decriminalized Lansing, and he won, and it was awesome. And
I sent him the link. There's a lot of people, and Quinette received the link also too. So there's some folks that maybe Sunday night is just inconvenient for them too. So there's lots of reasons why people may not be able to participate.
I got other few names to put in the book of praise and so on. I would say Craig Canterbury. Okay.
Oh man.
Dave Rogan. Back in the day, I mean, think about it. It was serious threats that were going on. I mean, these folks stepped in. They, put a chill on all the action. They got delays, and they got a thing worked out. We could have been trashed, but they stepped up to the plate. I'm just going back in time a little bit.
And honestly, Tim, to this day, if I need some serious legislative advice, he's the only guy to call. If you don't know what to do, you call that guy, and he'll do a deep dive. And he's always going to tell you to do the right thing, and you just know that he's right.
I remember Dave Brogan. First of all, Cannabis Patients United was an early group, along with the MAC, but that actually predated the MAC, and they were part of that. Really, one of the first organizations gathered together.
Jamie, you were familiar with that, Jamie. I mean, look at this gentleman here. He's just calmly, sitting here, Yeah.
But Tim, wouldn't you say Craig just has an absolute brilliant mind? Just brilliant.
Yes, he is.
Yeah.
Yeah, he is, and he's really very, very. He's always available. He can get into complex issues, make them simple. Nobody gets angry or pissed off, and there's an enlightening thing about the conversation.
I remember Dave Brogan hosted a.
When you read Craig's emails, you maybe think he's not really nice, and then when you talk to him, you're like, wow, he is actually really a nice guy.
Yeah, he's not that nice to some people. If he gets aggressively hit on, well, he'll, but he's solid. I mean,
he also, he's from the far western reaches of the Upper Peninsula, near the Wisconsin border. And there are, similar to, and especially in Southeast Michigan, we have a lot of medical marijuana refugees and, now people trying to get in the industry from Ohio. Well, up there, it's the same, but with Wisconsin and even, Illinois and as far as Minnesota. So, it's a different population with a different, kind of approach and understanding of everything. And I think that allows Craig to be sort of removed and, very analytical of the, nuances of any legislation or news item.
Well, his specialty, I mean, he digs very deep, and he goes into arcane, reports from policy agencies and administrative bureaus, and he can look for clues that sends a signal as to which way things are going, and he can identify something like that and carefully analyze it, and he doesn't get angry if you don't agree with him or whatever, and or vice versa. Just a very, level-headed, resourceful individual. I mean, almost genius-like. I met him once in life. This is about 10 years ago, and you can find him if you're on Facebook. You know what he looks like, but hey, what the hell? I mean, good, but smart guy, real smart guy. I've learned a lot from him. I mean, every.
Tell you what, Dave.
Me too. Yeah.
Yep. One of the most fun events I've ever been to in my political career was a fundraiser held at Dave Brogren's house for David Layton when we were trying to run David Layton in opposition to Bill Schuette for Attorney General. I remember running around the room with a hat in the air, begging people to put money in there, and we had just a great time. He was a very generous host. It's, to invite that many people into your home is not an easy thing to do. And then also to embrace a candidate that's going up against an incumbent and maybe not having such a great chance at it. So we did sometimes tilt at windmills. We did sometimes champion things we thought were probably not going to be successful, but the fight was worth it. The Layton campaign.
He had a beautiful home. He had a beautiful home.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, he did. And it was particularly used for, well, it was more of a private residence, but socializing, it was just great. And you could get, his place, let's say, to have a fundraiser. It's like, whoa, you're not going to go wrong, period, unless you're looking for some place in the hood. But I mean, every top, whatever, they'd always be happy to go to Dave's place. It was impressive, this vast garden. It was zen-like, the way, every bush was clipped and it was just growing so perfectly. And I mean that in a positive way. Yeah. And he, it was, wow, it was a big help. Big deal for us.
And I know Robin was very wise to point out that we would forget people if we didn't mention them. And from the west side of the state, there were some people that did some great stuff. I mean, in the early days, Kevin Spittler from Kalamazoo, you got Tammy Vandenberg and Michael Tuffelmeyer from the Grand Rapids area, Dave Overholt in the early days too. There's just so many people. It's going to be impossible to not say them all without missing somebody. And so we apologize when we do.
Well, it's a terrible thing to miss people, and I'm trying to think all the time. But no, the mention of Michael Tuffelmeyer, that crew in Grand Rapids, that was a purely, from what I don't know, an independent effort. It organically came, from Grand Rapids. Jack Hoffman was a giant. He was a legal giant. He was a heavy player with that whole thing with Michael and that crew. They were just, they didn't need any, it was beautiful. They were, as good as it gets.
So for our listeners, to let our listeners know what we're talking about, there was a time when we were doing an awful lot of local initiatives here in the state of Michigan, specifically say for Michigan Coalition and their associates. But then all of a sudden this Grand Rapids thing popped up and we didn't have anything to do with it. We were kind of surprised, Tim. We were sort of like, wow, these guys are doing it all their own support, and they were successful in Grand Rapids. So the west side of the state, for our viewers that might not be familiar with it, much more conservative than the southeastern Michigan area. So it was quite a surprise and we were very impressed.
And they have this whole, for legalization group going strong out there. And I just remember it was impressive. Yeah. Again, very grassroots. Mm-hmm. And they just really got together and hustled and pulled it off. That was fun.
I heard about it. I went out there. I deliberately, I got to meet these people, and and I did that, and it was like everything was so well organized. Seriously, I mean, all you could do is, hey, yeah, you got it right. Yeah, this is really cool. And showed up, and these people, I mean, had it in hand. I mean, they had a plan, and it worked. It was extraordinary. This is like a big deal, and it's true. People try to put that down or try to delegitimize it, but no, that was a big deal out here.
Yeah, and we were successful with a lot of the things we did because we had a network going, and the media in Southeast Michigan is very much detached from the media on the west side of the state. So a lot of our local successes weren't very highly publicized out there. So the trickle of social change really was not very prevalent over on that side. Saginaw, Flint, Pontiac, the Oakland County area, Wayne County area, we all were on the program already, but the west side not so much. So it really was quite a big effort. But and they'd been
that was the decriminalized Grand Rapids campaign, wasn't it?
Yes, sir.
Yes, it.
Yeah, and I think, like Tim said, it was Jack Hoffman and Mike Tuffelmeyer, but I think both of those guys are pretty wired into the Democratic Party. In fact, they were running part of the campaign out of a Democratic headquarters office in Grand Rapids. So, I think they had more organization behind the scenes than we realized.
Well, regardless, I mean, it was just a surprise. That was what took me by surprise, because we really hadn't given them any support. They were just doing it on their own.
I have a theory. Okay, which I believe is correct. And with Grand Rapids itself is a kind of little area of Democratic Party. I mean, folks that identify with the Democratic Party, and then the suburbs have, that's GOP stuff. But again, what they were very effectively did is carved out Grand Rapids itself, so it was guaranteed to win. No, the county, I mean, they didn't really have any control. I mean, yeah, they tried to screw with them. They had to fight it out in court, and ultimately, they won. And they really, I mean, they were. Gosh, I wish one of these folks were on the show tonight. They're wonderful people, and I'm saying this is really truly, and they're not. I think they seem happy. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the deal is, but it's all good.
Amy Gassaway from the west side of the state, who participated in that campaign, said, "We worked hard. We made the taxpayers understand how it was costing them in their pocket to put people in prison." She said she appreciated those guys as awesome people. That's just the kind of message we're looking for.
Reminds me of I met Amy and Victor Vicious and a few other notables for the first time at one of the first meetings in Grand Rapids area put on by Todd Dyer.
Oh wow, that's a name I haven't heard in a long time.
From one of the first old school kind of Compassion Club meetings.
And we start talking about seed seller in Jackson, Roger Mofert. Roger and Victor used to have a radio show in the early days of the things. And I used to do a radio program with Stephen J. Green and Ryan Bringold, and we actually had Denise Paulicella as an attorney. And we would come on WTKG, WFNT, and WDTW. We were on the Real Radio as a syndicated cannabis broadcast. I mean, that's in 10 and 11
I would
right there.
say Gersh Avery should be mentioned.
Oh, hell yeah.
I mean, he was, right out there. I mean, it was.
Kirk Reed, too. I mean,
just to be clear about Gersh, what was really awesome, I mean, at least for somebody in my position and Rick and others, was he had product out there that was cannabis that could be used without getting high right away. And that goes without saying in today's conversation, but back then it was one of the rare things we had tangibly to point to demonstrate cannabis being used in a completely different way.
Yeah, I mean, we got to talk about Bob Redden. We got to talk about the agros, some of the people that were really victimized over the last 10 years, because it hasn't been an easy 10. We talk about some of our victories, but there have been a lot of people that got screwed. Duval, Ryan Basor, Rick Ferris, for Christ's sakes, my business partner who did 2 years as a stretch. I mean, Adam Brook, who's on this call right now. I mean, there are a lot of folks out there that paid the price for their cannabis advocacy one way or another. I mean, it would be wrong for us to talk about all of the positives without remembering, you know, Renee Emery Wolf, who's not with us any longer, Isaac Robinson, who just passed from COVID. You know,
You remember Dan Solano. You must remember Dan.
Dan Solano.
Come
barely.
on. Come on.
Hey, he's one of the founders of LEAP.
Yep,
Right.
absolutely.
Right.
One of the first lobby days we ever did in Lansing, Dan Solano led the team. I learned about lobbying lobby day from Dan, and he was good at it.
Kathy Kennedy.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. She came out to my home one time. She's wonderful. She was always there on the cutting edge, way ahead, kind, gentle.
So
Person, stoic.
Lou
very-
Berling, Richard Clement. We could go on all night long.
Richard Clement. Well, maybe we should. Maybe we should. What
Mike
the hell?
Diesel,
Why don't you cite names of wonderful people? You know, I mean,
So I'm
seriously, this is wonderful.
We'll keep going until everybody has been mentioned.
Adam
There you
Adam will throw some out right now. Adam.
No, I can throw out May Nutt. I don't know how many of you remember May Nutt and who she was.
Yep.
I mean, I know Stephen did, but May Nutt was literally one of the first medical marijuana activists in the state. I mean, literally, she had a son that had testicular cancer, and she ended up taking medibles at the time to the hospital and feeding cancer patients. And cops would drop off weed in her mailbox, and that they seized on the street and stuff, and they'd leave it in her mailbox for her. And when we met this woman, she was, 76 years old. And I mean, there are people like that. I was thinking about it earlier before we started throwing out names. I'm like, man, I wonder if I can start thinking about who all the dead people are, because there are people that, died 20 years ago that got help to get us where we are today, who will just never be mentioned. And I'm trying who was the guy from MAPS?
Rick Doblin.
Oh, Maps. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Oh, I know who you're talking about.
The guy collected all the. Who?
His name was Richard. He
Yes.
was in the UP.
Yes.
First name Richard.
Richard Lake.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yes,
Richard Lake, there you go. Richard Lake. Yep.
Listen,
Yeah, he's real.
I tell people, we're here sitting here all on social media, Zoom, doing this thing, and people say, man, you've been in this a while. Yeah, I've been in this so long ago that we used to use fax machines to do shit like this. Okay. Richard Lake, he collected newspaper. I mean, I have emails from him being in his feed that I literally have collected over the years in binders because it was the news story of the day. And he combed every news source you could ever find to get this stuff. And it wasn't easy like it is today, where you put in your name as a Google search, and we all know when our name's spoken. But
Yeah.
and you could take his stuff and go talk to somebody and say, listen, I'm telling you, things are changing. Here's a study. Here's this. Here's that. And it was all coming out of him.
Yep.
He was he was a kind of national authority, to some degree. He had his stuff got to other listservs and things like that.
But he was our local guy, which was so cool.
Right.
But he
Right.
did
And a
help
bit of
the
a
effort.
recluse, or that's all he did. It seemed.
Richard Lake.
Yes.
That was his whole
Yeah,
life.
come on. You're
Yes.
an Arrow
Also,
member. Hey.
He also
He was
Jerry
former
Glass.
military too, I believe, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was military
Right.
background. Yeah. And he lived in the
He
UP.
was involved in Prop 215 in California, as I recall.
Yes, he was.
Jerry
So-
Glassbach, who is now a township supervisor in his area of the UP.
Yep.
Yeah.
There are a few people that were known for cannabis advocacy before they became a local official. I mean, you got to throw Eric Gunnels in on that too. Gunnels, I think, first got his position in Thetford.
Oh yeah, he was
2015.
right there from day one. Oh my God, yeah.
Thetford is a very progressive community nowadays and hosts a lot of businesses in the Genesee County area. So
Jeremy and Ramona Rapinski.
that's correct. The GC3 is one of those wicked illegal clubs that Don Bailey likes to point out that I go to. That's been up for a very, very long time.
Cover your ears. Both ears. Hey,
if
Don
I
Bailey,
may,
man, you can't bring his name up. I can't not say it. All right, you can uncover your ears. Thank you.
Yeah, I heard you.
Okay. Anyways.
And we have to, of course, thank Steve Sharp, who we lost.
Very much so.
His chocolate bears were so good.
Well, and his great time, at his party, the Stoner on the Lake or something like that party.
Stoner Day on the Lake, yes.
Yeah, there you go. I was at. These were good parties. My God.
Yeah, they were.
Sure, anybody could just hang out, and it was wonderful, wonderful.
He and Brian Rice would set up barbecue grills from early in the morning because they just love to feed people. It's really how they made themselves happy, and they would just cook all day long, drink and cook and smoke and chat, and that's great. But one of the things, Stephen, though, is Steve got some of the first hemp legislation passed here in the state of Michigan in, I think, 2014. He was really a driving force. Matthew Abel also seriously involved.
Steve Sharp was a Democrat, but he switched parties because the Republicans were in, and that's how he got hemp passed. And God bless him.
You could always count on Steve. He was always in the Capitol. He's always there. I saw him all the time, and he had a large cannabis leaf, gold pin, and he wore it very proudly, and he would just talk your ear off.
He was very affable. Yeah. He always had a story. He was very easy to get along with. We didn't know until we went to his funeral, but he was a huge guy in the Eagles, his local community as well. It was a huge funeral. They were shooting guns out behind the funeral parlor. It was kind of, they had a little.
I have a Steve Sharp story. Okay, seriously. Him and I went on a lonely mission up north to the Tea Party convention, up at Mount Pleasant. And, it was really, some people wouldn't like it or whatever, but there's some rural folks and everybody was just really right there, and Steve, he really was able to capture the imagination. He was able to get attention. And then when they were saying the Pledge of Allegiance, everybody had their hand on their heart, or, they were like that, and born, and then the unborn. Yeah, he like interrupted. I mean, really heavy duty at the solemn moment, and people got. And then they continued, and all of a sudden they started walking up to him, like he was like so bold. This was like a heroic gesture. It was really, he had a magic about him, and he got interviewed. Actually, he was, what's the guy that he's editor of the editorial page, Brian Dickerson, wrote profiled Steve, from that thing. And it was memorable. Yeah, good man. I had to share that memory of Steve Sharp. Born.
Hey, you guys did a great job at that event too, as I recall, Tom.
Yeah, well, yeah, I think so. I think we did.
All right, it's way past my bedtime, guys. Thank you so much.
Oh, Robin, wow.
I can't do it anymore.
I'm going to go on for a long time.
Thanks,
I got
Robin.
kind of a buzz. I'm going to go on for a long time, folks. I may be the last.
Hey, Robin.
Yeah.
Happy
anniversary. Happy anniversary,
Robin.
Hey, Robin, it was good to see you, and I hope you have a good time in Bel Air. And so far, we have no snow up here.
All right, I'll be up. I will be there soon. Thank you.
That was fun. Oh, man.
Hey, Rick.
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to share something with everybody. How proud I am of my Benzonia Township Board up here. Jason is the township supervisor, Jason Bernard, and he's on our Democrat Executive Board. But the township board is predominantly old-time Republicans. They've been Republicans all their life. They've been on the board most of their life. And for them to unanimously support the medical marijuana ordinance and then the recreational ordinance, I think that speaks a lot for how Republican and Democrats can work together for the good of the community. And I'll never forget, they wanted me at both the adoption of both the ordinances. And when I went to the recreational one, after they passed it unanimously, I stood up and I said, I just want to thank you all from the bottom of my heart for helping me to see my dream come true. And I'll never forget Karen Burns, who's been Republican all her life, and the township treasurer. She says, well, if any of these dispensary owners act up, Brad, we're going to sick you on them.
That's a pretty heavy threat. So, yeah.
So we have 3 dispensaries running now. We still have Mary Hahn with her little lawsuit in the Benzie County Court, and it ain't going nowhere. And even if she was to win and get it on the ballot somewhere down the road in Benzonia Township, I have complete confidence in my Benzonia Township residents that they'll put Mary Hahn to bed permanently.
Once people see how it functions in society and how it's really not the detriment that everybody said it was, how it's the sky doesn't fall in and crime doesn't happen and when we don't bring chaos to the streets, people are like, oh, that's it. No biggie. No big deal. When they see it with their own eyes, the stigma falls away. I mean, I've been waiting for John Sinclair to join us this evening. He hasn't. But when we start talking about people that really help move the needle in Michigan politics when it comes to cannabis law reform, we really would be remiss if we didn't speak about John. I wanted to wait till he joined, but it just seems as if maybe he will not be joining us tonight. So
I would say that it was people like John Sinclair who, when we talk about moving the ball forward, he helped to put the ball in play.
Yeah.
And that's something that a lot of people don't really quite understand. And what John Sinclair did for marijuana was he started the process of legalization, certainly in Michigan, but across the country also. And he did that in Michigan by starting the process of removing marijuana from being listed as a narcotic, which it was considered at the time. And he explained to the court that it has been mislabeled, and then it actually was a euphoriant, at which point that meant all these narcotic laws needed to be rewritten. So it's people like that who understood how law works and how laws were wrong and needed to be corrected that helped to get us where we are today. So, you know, I've worked with John for years and we talk some pretty off the wall politics, but the one thing that has been constant through all of it is that this was about, you know, correcting bad law. And you're not going to tell us what to do.
Yep. Well,
you know, another guy that kind of has been around.
Colleen Keys as well too. We talk about, you know,
another guy that's been around for a while is Rich Burkett.
Oh God, yeah, Rich Burkett.
Yeah.
This guy. Oh my God, he's an old timer. Boy, he was a serious radical back then.
Well, Rich caused a lot of trouble in Ann Arbor as a local activist. I mean, that was his forte was you know, waking these people up, and fortunately Rich kept a hell of an archives on the hash bash. It's pretty thorough. I use it when I'm interviewed all the time because it's the only way I can remember anything. So I'm constant. I mean, I've looked it up twice today to look up particular things. Like I was trying to figure out when Chuck Green first showed up at Hash Bash. And when, you know, there's a photo of him somewhere. And I can remember this guy coming up to me and saying, hey, man, I'm an elected official in Scioto Township. And I'm like, well, you can speak next if you want. Because, you know, we were about elected officials. And this was long before any elected official would want to speak there. So, you know, Rich Burkett was real good friends with Renee and Mary Wolf, and there were some real good times back in the day. Rich now lives in Mexico, down in Guadalajara, and comes up for Hash Bash. But
I saw him actually at the last Hash Bash. I ran into him, and he's really looking, quote unquote, good. I mean that really positively. It seems like he's really very even keel. Like he's doing fine. He understands his role in life.
Yeah, he comes up every year for Hash Bash and the NORML Spring Conference, and he usually gets a lot of great footage and continues to compile everything from news articles and videos to T-shirts he saw on the street for the archives. So I kind of wish more people knew about the archives, because I think it's hash-bash, so hash-bash.com, and you should be able to find the archive there. It's impressive.
When it comes to knowing your places, as Mr. Beck just mentioned, I'd just like to tell you that certain someone says elected officials shouldn't be allowed to speak at Hash Bash. That someone is Senator Jeff Irwin. Thank you very much, Senator Irwin, for joining our chat this evening. I'll be happy to send you a Zoom link so that you can join us. Also, Kevin, who has now bowed out. Kevin said, only my second Zoom meeting. First one I tried to join audio didn't work. Thanks for all the nice comments we said. Thank you for everyone else for their hard work, also signing off. So Kevin McCaffrey was here to listen to all those wonderful things we said about him, and he was appreciative. So that's fantastic. We'll try and get Jeff Irwin a link to the Zoom broadcast. Man, it's been quite a fun night so far.
I've got more heroes. I got more heroes that need to be recognized. You're gonna
let it go. You just let it go.
All right. I would like to nominate on the role of heroes Michael Comorn. Michael Comorn.
Oh,
I definitely second that.
Hey,
hold on.
No.
Hey,
I would say another. I'm sorry, yeah, go on, please.
No, I can't remember his
name. The one name to the other. I first in the Hall of Michael Comorn.
Yeah, he's done a lot of work with the MMMA, and I congratulate him and his firm. They're on the front lines. We're co-counsel in that case where Sinclair is suing the government again, and he's trooper.
I'll give credit to Jim Razor, who saved my ass in Chesterfield Township when I was on the witness stand, and also Paul Talenda, who helped defend Big Daddies and other MAC members when we got raided earlier too.
I would also point out the late, great, even though he fucked me over a few times, Mike Segesta, who worked real hard in the weed game. And I did Mike really wrong, and I have some great video on YouTube with Mike. So I, have to put his name out there because
Adam, I know what you're referring to. Okay, I guess it can be found on the so-called dark web now or something like that. But you take the thing, of him being arrested by cops, and you narrated the thing. I'm sure it's somewhere. I know you probably have it in your collection. But Michael, there was some. He was a little undependable. Okay, that would be a criticism.
But in fairness, Michael was Michael was a really ill guy, and his illness really took him down. So I knew Mike for a long time, and I remember when Mike was a real strong, hell of a guy, and did some great work in the weed space. So I just put it out there because I really liked it.
Hey.
And the other thing you learn from that is, I love you, Adam, but I don't want to be your neighbor.
I can agree with that, but if you pay your rent, then you can be my neighbor. If you don't pay your rent, you gotta move the fuck out.
That would be pretty much part of the contract, I think. Yeah.
George Sherfield and Greg Francisco.
Yeah, Greg Francisco. Greg Francisco, along with Tim Beck, came and visited me in prison. So I point that out. Greg Francisco showed up in prison with enough hash on his fingers from working that day that I was high for like a month. No, I wasn't. But I mean, literally, I looked down and his fingers were black. And I'm like, dude, they didn't say anything to you coming through the gate? He's like, no. and they were covered in resin. He was a cool guy. He is a cool guy. He's still around.
So you rolled that finger hash off and took it back to your cell, right?
I did not. No, sir. No. No,
He ate
sir.
it right there.
Right there in the visiting room.
I wouldn't be surprised. That's the only way to get it past the guards. So, I mean, there's so many people. We hate to overlook anybody, as we mentioned before, but Everett Swift, when you talk about the hemp movement, Michael Toohey, of course, up there too, has been maintaining some hemp products in the hemp business for a long time. These are guys that really help move the needle on that particular scale too. And every victory hemp has is a victory for cannabis and vice versa.
I have another nominee in the Roll of Honor. The name is Dave Light.
Oh yeah,
Dave.
Oh hell yeah!
Come on, this guy was way ahead of the curve.
Still is holding down Saginaw.
He did a lot behind the scenes.
Yep. No.
Oh, Saginaw Dave.
Saginaw Dave.
Yep, Saginaw.
Yeah.
He wrote checks to MiLegalize. I know Jamie and I were at an event. He didn't want anybody to know he was there because of his employment, but he took care of stuff, and he was a good ally. I mean,
you know, another guy that he should be considered a important figure would be Paul Stanford, the guy that rolled in here from Oregon and opened a clinic to certify patients when no other doctor in Michigan would. So,
well, no other doctor knew how either. That was the other thing, is that Stanford rolled in with a process and a system and
his doctor from Colorado who ended up being prosecuted. What was his name?
Don't spoil.
Well, that was some bullshit prosecution, talking about people who should get pardons or whatever. I guess they never smacked. Did they? I don't know. They were going after his medical license for writing recommendations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The system doesn't like to be. The system doesn't like to be changed. They resist change violently, and that's how they do it.
But you're right. Paul Stanford rolled in here. I think he made his own forms, and just.
Well, he brought in a doctor. He brought in a doctor that was considered legitimate, and he didn't even care. Okay.
Actually, no. The forms
and
were
others started getting involved. I think that's my thinking anyway. Matt, you might know better, but that was the thing. That's what it says. I mean, he just bought this doctor, and bam, he just came in. Hey,
well,
he started certifying. Others got more bold, I think, right? I mean, Brad, I don't know.
Well, he at some point he set up in Southfield in a big high rise,
right.
And he had legitimate doctors. I think he actually had 2 or 3 different doctors, and they were pretty thorough. The Michigan Medical Marijuana Association, which I was a part of at that time, we worked at that clinic 2 or 3 days a week, answering questions for people, because there would be like 20 or 25 people in this conference room waiting to see the doctor. And, some of them would wait for hours, and they'd all have questions. And so Greg Francisco and I spent several months there, like 3 or 4 months, shepherding these patients through the process as Paul licensed them. And, kept the process moving smoothly.
I did something like
That's
that.
That's where I met Search Warrant Steve.
Oh yeah. Well, the whole MOCC, the Macomb Oakley Compassion Center.
I met. So I had dropped into the clinic. I was at the one in the high rise once, but then they moved to a low rise in Southfield, and it was down in the basement somewhere. And I went there, and Search Warrant Steve questioned me for like 2 hours about the law and everything. He ended up labeling his plants, color coding them, all that shit. And when he got raided, he showed the cops his loose leaf notebook and all the plants tagged and what it was. He was explaining the law to them, and they went away. And that's how he got the name Search Warrant Steve.
Yeah, we had him on the Jazz Cabbage Café show not that long ago. He's a good entertainer.
Yeah, a couple times.
Yep. So. I mean, there's just so many people. It's really hard to speak about anybody without leaving somebody out. But I'll say this: if I were to say that about the 3 cases that really made a big difference in Michigan as far as moving the needle on cannabis, you got to talk about the Sinclair case from way back again. Got to talk about the Basor case because that was very, very moving. But then Bree Green, baby Bree, remember this? I mean, when we talked about how horrible Child Protective Services was, this was the case that brought this front and center to Michigan residents, and they were brutal to the Greens, and the Greens just took it right to the media. Josh Covert, the attorney in that situation, although there were other attorneys too, but Josh was the primary. I mean, wow, that was
our community hit back real hard on that one. Everybody can be really proud. I mean,
Charmy was huge on that too. Yep, we failed to mention Charmy Golson from the Michigan Midwest Cultivator, all the rest of the stuff too. Yep.
Yeah, Charmy put together a protest in front of CPS.
Yep.
And there were like probably 50 people there. I was there.
We stood in a semicircle, and yes, it was.
Richard Clement and Carol Reed.
Free the weed, baby.
Yep. Yeah. I just was on a Zoom call with Richard Clement today, actually, regarding Detroit. Yep, that's right. So, but yeah.
Well, yeah, I got another nominee. I have another nominee. Lamar Lemons. Yeah, Lamar Lemons.
Oh yeah, he and Leon Drolet, right, held the first hearing on marijuana in the state house.
That's right, sir. You got that right, man. You know it. You know it. The other thing Lamar did, he was the one that was most responsible for gathering the signatures for the medical marijuana initiative in August of 2004. Yeah. Or I mean, 04. You know, that we won. He was the one. His organization. Bam, you know, they were just so effective. I have to, he's a nominee, but he was just, you know, this guy's so cool. And he's still around. He's still a player in Detroit. It's absolutely amazing. He's a wonderful, wonderful person, but he doesn't like to, he's a modest individual. But yeah.
You know, we haven't talked about Jeff Irwin tonight, although we mentioned his name briefly. But I think also when we start talking about this type of elected official type things, George Cushenberry. If you look,
I was going to mention Cush, right?
I would also mention the late Perry Bullard, who smoked a joint at the second hash bash and was censured by the legislature for doing so. And the interesting thing about Perry Bullard is Steve the cop. Steve Williams, is that his name? Esteban.
Steve Miller.
Steve Miller.
Yep. Works in Camorne's office, and he's a LEAP speaker. Yep.
Right, and you all know how much I hate cops, and I don't give them a fair chance. But this guy, when I was introduced to him, someone said, and he was the detective that investigated the death of Perry Bullard.
Yes, it's true.
At which point I was all ears. This guy's awesome. His product's awesome. Shout out to him. But Perry Bullard was a weed king back in the day and got us a lot of favorable publicity. So shout out to him.
I remember him. He was radical. I mean, I lived out in Monroe County at the time. I mean, deep, you know, in the darkest, you know, whatever part, and it's like this Perry Bullard, and there's this infamous or famous photo of him, you know, token on a rope, you know, and with a scissors type thing, you know, and it's spread all over the state.
That's why we still allow politicians at hash bash, you know.
And he was, you know, the sad thing about him, I followed his career. I met him. I actually, you know, had a. Yeah, I had a toke or two with the guy, and you know, in the end, you know, he should not have left his position of great power in the Democratic. He was head of judiciary, House Judiciary. This man had everything, and some people say, well, I don't know, he got bored. people in Arbor got angry at him. He wanted to be a judge, and he got, you know, he didn't make it. And but at that moment in time, he was really awesome. It was like he was just, you know.
Well, I'll tell you why we keep bringing politicians back to Hash Bash is I'm really waiting for the day that Jeff Irwin upstages Perry Bullard and smokes a joint.
Well, Perry's dead now, but you know, I'm just saying, you know. But I'm sorry, I didn't mean anything. But I didn't want to consider the rest of the story. There's a lot of gossip going around, but hey, you know, I'm sorry.
Okay. Nope. The thing that Nick's talking about is we would really love to see a sitting senator, you know, embrace cannabis to the point where they would feel comfortable enough publicly to be able to do that. But you know,
cool. Yeah.
Well, some idiots made it illegal to smoke in public.
I know.
Thank you.
Who did that?
No.
What the fuck?
No. Fuck it, hey, come on.
Oh, we can't smoke in public? Nobody gave me that memo.
Reverend Steve, you can do anything you want, buddy.
But hash bash is a protest. Hash bash is a protest where we say "fuck you" to the man. So don't worry about smoking a joint on hash bash. And I would dare this legislature to censure some representative or elected official nowadays. I can't imagine.
No.
Well, but as for Jeff Irwin, isn't he the man in the first place? So
I've never had a problem saying "fuck you." I've known him a lot longer than he's been an elected official.
I think "fuck you" to the man is a general concept of the man, and not every single person that could be defined as the man. So,
all right, thanks for laying that out.
You know, his dad was a big player. He was a big player, you know, in the legislature, the state senator. A great role model, you know, and Jeff has, you know, become the best of the best. I mean, he won a harsh election. If you recall, it was to get in the Democratic primary, it was 2 females.
To get in the Senate, yes, exactly.
Yes. Oh, yeah. And, you know, he's just been kind of like who he is. He doesn't ever come across as greedy, you know, or deeply self-interested or have, you know, some kind of agenda. I mean, he just is there, you know, he represents the community. I mean, it doesn't get any better.
Here's the other thing. Jeff Irwin has had to work in an environment where he's been in the minority party for a very, very long time. And it's difficult to get your agenda accomplished when you don't have the superiority of votes. So the art of compromise is a much more subtle one than the art of sledgehammer. You know, I'm more of a sledgehammer guy. Jeff Irwin is able to work with people. And that really is a skill. It's not something that you're born with. You have to develop that.
Can you imagine if the Democrats can flip the Senate, he could become majority leader?
I would love that. That would be so
then we could get some legislation through.
Yeah.
And it could happen.
Correct, Matt.
We really try.
What's that, Steve? You know, the thing about him, he has this kind of a very balanced, you know, attitude toward the whole thing. He understands his place. It's not like he doesn't have some grand dreams or whatever. He just does it day to day, and he's very, very good at it. You know, very good. I could find I've had serious business with him, and he's as good as it gets. And even GOP people, even Republicans, they don't hate the guy. They don't hate him at all. You know, he's like, yeah, he's normal. Okay, we can have a conversation with him, you know, and stuff like that. I'm being as real as it gets. And so he's a very honorable man, very solid, good guy.
Representative Yusuf Rabi, also very helpful in the Michigan House. He's been a champion of cannabis issues. There are other legislators that have championed individual issues too, but those two really stand out as current sitting legislators that have really been champions for a cause. So.
Coleman Young Jr.
Yeah, Senator Coleman.
Oh man. Yeah.
I'd also mention
he's as real as it gets. I mean, he really is. He's never wavered from being pro cannabis. He's never had the wrong attitude. He has been solid.
Tim, I'm sorry, I have to interrupt you. Everybody, can I get a free the weed on a 1, 2, 3? 1, 2, 3. Free the weed. Welcome Richard Clement to the broadcast.
Oh yeah.
Hey Richard.
Hey, bro. Hey, how y'all doing? Great,
We're
how
off.
you do it?
I get my audio working here. Can you hear me now?
Oh yeah, we can.
Sir.
Long and strong, man.
Hey, man, you out in the car, Richard?
Yeah, I'm getting ready to go light up one with burn one with you guys, man.
There you go. Richard smoking in the car. I love it. Richard smoking in the car every day on the Facebook.
Oh yeah, I gotta give my wife a little props, but hey.
Well,
man, hey, I'd be honored to know you guys, man.
Richard, thank you for participating in the broadcast tonight, and thanks for the years of service too. I mean, lately with the Missionary's office and things like that too, and the different stuff, but for years and years before that, years and years.
Been smoking since 1975, man. That's right.
Right.
Hey,
75.
Richard.
Yes.
This is Steve. I remember.
Steve, what's going on, babe?
I remember when you and Melody and I stood behind the Ann Arbor City Police Cruiser 2 years ago at Hash Bash and lit up and said, "And look here, he's got his lights on and he's here to protect us."
That's right. I still got that picture. That was one of my best cover photos on Facebook, man. No shit, man.
Yeah.
Good to see you, Richard.
Hey, good to be seen, brothers. Good to be seen, man. And we almost there. And I guess next thing we could do is start pushing city ordinances to say stop testing for weed, for any job as a job requirement,
Right.
Yeah. Many of us old timers that have been trying to do this all our life, we see things like the MORE Act and we see things like the UN resolution. And it's like, it's all going in the right direction. We may not like what's in it all the time, but it's still going in the right direction. And there will come a day when cannabis will be just as popular as tomatoes and onions.
Yep.
Richard, seriously, I have the memories to share, as you well know. And going back when, I'll never forget, at your place. And Steve, I think Reverend Steve, you were there. You were at Richard's place, and it was a party in Lansing. This is back in the old days. This is pre, 2000, 8. Okay, and there's a party at Richard's. We had the old, NORML, newsletter with candid photos, and it was, and I think Greg Francisco was putting like these devil horns behind Richard Clement. And we were, but I'll never forget, that when his place in Lansing, it was, and he called his place the War Room. Okay, and he had, the computers set up and, everything was there. It was a little, there were files scattered around, but I mean, it was like, wow. It was really, neat occasion. I use that expression, the War Room. I got that from Richard Clement. Okay, I still say that to people now, and I have to, attribute that to Richard Clement.
Yep.
Oh man.
Well, I'd like to interrupt real quick so that we can announce our latest guest. Thank you very much for joining us today, Senator Jeff Irwin. Jeff,
hey, all right.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah. Thanks for welcoming me on. I was trying to make sure I could get my kids to bed, let you guys say all the nice things you might say about me, and also I was just waiting for Richard to get on.
It's a wise choice. I think since Senator Irwin's on now, all the bad words can come out now. His kids are in bed, so we're good to say anything we want.
Yeah,
good to see you, Senator Jeff.
All
right.
It's great to hear from you all, and it's great to celebrate the anniversary of our big win together. And I can remember so many times with so many of you. So going back to being in the Capitol and just seeing Richard makes me remember one time when he came into that Judiciary Committee and sat down and talked to the legislators about all the important reasons for them to pass a law to make safe and legal access a reality for people here in the state of Michigan. And then at the end of it, he said, "Free the weed for those in need."
That weed ring, baby. That's right. That's right. Oh yeah.
Well, I'll never forget the recall shooty. The recall shooty, please. Remember, this guy. The recall shooty.
Like 4 times you had to file that paperwork.
Richard Clement, you were responsible for this nonsense. I mean, all the media were covering you. You got your name in the paper, and then you're going to be impeached. Really serious.
Shooty's lawyers got so sick of having to come back to Midland to go over this. They helped Richard out to create the language properly so that they could get approved.
Richard up here as our guest speaker for one of our global marches up in Traverse City, and he came up with his girlfriend, spent the night at our house, and him and I had more fun that day singing "Free the Weed" going downtown Traverse City. We had everybody clapping, stomping, and us singing.
Oh yeah. We came a long way, man. We the old school warriors in this mother, you know. And it was a worthy fight. I mean, we fought some real haters up there, and you know, even like say in Detroit, they might have took us out of the office up there, the city council, but we won the war. Damn it, we won the war on them. You know what I'm saying?
Right. We did outlast them. That's true. You know, some of us have worn a lot of different hats. You're hearing us talk about people that are board members of this, board members of that. One thing people should know about Senator Irwin is that he actually worked for the Committee to Regulate Marijuana like Alcohol. In between the time when he was a House representative and when he became a senator, he was continually working for marijuana law reform that whole time. So, I mean, thank you for your work there and for all the work you put forth in getting us where we're at.
Thank you,
we were
Senator.
doing events around the state and trying to promote the initiative. And, you know, there are so many people here on this call that I can just see who were deeply involved in writing it and, you know, getting the initial support and getting the initial signatures to even get it on the ballot. And shoot, I'm reminded of, you know, meeting Adam back early on the days of the Personal Responsibility Amendment, I think it was called, way back in, was that 2000 or 2002?
2000 and 2001.
Right.
Yeah, and so, you know, so many folks have been working at this for so long, and it just kind of takes me back to the story that Reverend Steve told a few minutes ago about how those, you know, Republican township supervisors and township trustees and township clerks were, you know, voting for this now because of the, you know, work that so many people have put in for so many years, building those kinds of relationships, and, you know, not just being willing to vote for it, but being willing to invite, you know, Reverend Steve and say, hey, why don't you come down here because you're a part of this.
Yeah. I mean, let me just say that we've got a lot of names here tonight. I will always remember one phrase, though. One phrase stands out in my mind, and when I say it, you know exactly who it was. Anandamide, brother. Anandamide, brother. That was Renee Emery Wolf's favorite talking point. She knew even way back before the chemistry was there that anandamide is one of those substances in our brain that's activated by THC, and how important it was. If we understood the chemistry behind it, how we could understood how better to use it for our bodies. And, you know, sometimes people pitch a lot of things about the monetary value and the societal evolution, but this really is a healing plant. And a lot of the work that we've done really helps to heal the wounds of our planet and our species.
Right.
Hear, hear.
I have another hero. To nominate. I'm sorry. I just can't talk about myself. I just want to talk about, you know.
Go for it, Tim.
Remember Brandy Zink.
Oh, yeah.
Brandy Zink.
Yeah.
So there's going to be a return of a Michigan. There's going to be a return of a Michigan ASA chapter, and Brandy's going to be one of the leaders in that.
Yep.
She was so steady Eddie back in the early days. I mean, she was kind of a radical.
She was a cannabis refugee from Ohio. She came up here because we had favorable laws, and she was an advocate that had worked with Drug Policy Alliance and other places too. She was an asset.
She'll be back on the
Some
scene a little bit.
powerful testimony to the legislature, spoke of her seizure disorder and everything, and very compelling.
Yep. Greg Pulowski came to Michigan. He's a guy who's currently still working in the city itself, but he was an advocate for a long time, trying to start businesses on Woodward in the city of Detroit, and was counsel to many people before they actually gave him a job doing it. And now he's an intricate part of what could be a new rollout of a hemp program in the city of Detroit. So that's Big Greg, you know.
Absolutely.
Hey, what about the weed?
Denny Hayes? as far as lawyers who were in it
Denny
from way
Hayes.
back.
Denny Hayes, yes.
I always tell people if there's any lawyer in Michigan who's been doing it longer than me, it's Denny.
Yep. Richard, what did you say? You said a name?
We need a weed flotilla on the Detroit River, man.
Well, Matt's got a boat. Matt's got a boat.
There you go. But
you know,
Richard wants to do it on the bridge and the tunnel.
You damn right. That's right.
Everywhere.
That's
because the federal lockup's a lot nicer than the county lockup.
Yeah, fuck the federal
about this,
law.
Richard? How about this goal? When they open the new bridge,
okay,
we want to smoke a joint then. And
there too. That's right.
There too.
That could happen.
Yep.
You know, with the right. We still have a couple years before that happens.
Yeah.
Well, shit, we can make it happen January 20th, man. You know, put on Kamala's boobs to the fire. Let's hold her up, hold her accountable, man.
That's a whole different conversation, I think, actually.
Yeah, let me ring on the banks of the Detroit River, baby. That's right. Fuck 'em. There you go.
So, Jeff, you missed earlier, I think, when I was talking about making you Senate Majority Leader in 2 years.
That's right.
Have you got that much time left on your term? You're not term limited, right?
Well, as many of you probably know, the lines are all going to be redrawn by the Nonpartisan Redistricting Commission. We'll probably see what the new districts look like by this fall, and I'll be running for re-election in 2022. And so hopefully I'll be able to get re-elected and continue to serve the people of the 18th district. Who knows what happens after that? I don't know who's even jockeying for the next leader, but what's important to me always has been passing good policy. And right now, looking forward towards this lame duck period, I think one of the things that a lot of us were focused on prior to the election was this idea that there was going to be some sort of attempt to rewrite the medical law and the recreational law, and to sort of merge them into one. And so, I think that that's not likely to happen now, given how much time is left in the legislature. And looking towards the next couple of years, I'm going to be focused on working with all of you to try to make sure we get that right, rather than thinking about who's going to lead what in some future that may never exist, right? I'm trying to, focus on that and, how we can improve those goals. Because I think that discussion is going to continue, right? And there's a lot of good reasons to push them together and to make sure that we have one. But we got to make sure is that the law that the people passed, the law that we're celebrating here today, the law that gives us, for all of its other faults and compromises, the best personal liberties of any cannabis reform law in the country is protected. That's what we have to do. That's what we bill. And, that discussion is going to roll forward, though. And so I think we need to be a productive part of it. And, those are the kinds of things I'm focused on.
Well,
thank you for being there. Yes, we've seen draft 8 now. I don't know how long they were working on it before they sprung it on us a couple of months ago, but I think a lot longer than that. The first one we saw was draft 5, I think.
Well, what Matt's referring to, for our viewers who may not be familiar with it, it's an effort to consolidate the MMFLA and the MRTMA programs into a single business licensing program, but it seems to have grown beyond those parameters into a program that adds some new things to the cannabis laws, and they need to be evaluated. And we've been working on that now for several months with the MRA.
Yeah, and I think the fact that they've shared drafts and reflected your thoughts and further proposals and discussions shows that your ideas are being considered seriously and being taken seriously. So, I'd continue to try to work with them and me and others who care about these things. Because one of the things we're sure about in Lansing, whether it's with cannabis or whether it's with alcohol or whether it's with anything else, is that the industry, the corporate interests will be represented. They will be represented there. Those voices will be heard. So we need to make sure that the voices of consumers are heard. We need to make sure that the voices of regular folks are heard in these conversations. That's my job, and I think that's sort of like all of our jobs as citizens, and particularly those of us who were involved in passing Proposal 1. I think that's our job to stand up for what it was that we did, I think, which was mostly a credit to the people of Michigan going forward. And I think that that's just been shown to be true for the last couple of years. Things are working out pretty well, given all the challenges that we faced over the last over the last 2 years as it's been rolling out.
Let me ask you something. When we gonna get the picture on our medical marijuana card?
I gotta laugh out loud at that.
Wow.
I mean, come on, man.
They've been collecting, the state has been collecting more money than it spends on those cards for a long time. So you'd think that if, getting a picture on them were an advantageous thing, it'd be done already. I think there are some folks, though, who probably don't want a picture. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not a part of whether or not there's a picture or not on
I thought we should have a caricature. A little caricature of ourselves put right there. Like maybe you're at the beach or maybe you're on a mountaintop or something. A little caricature of you instead of a photo.
Jeff, I got a question.
It's my understanding that
a cartoon version of a superhero, maybe?
Caricature to be the keep on trucking.
Jeff, I got a question.
Jeff, could you try to get
we
that
can
done?
get this done in lame duck? We got to have to get it done now.
Just so Richard will stop talking about it.
You could call it the Richard Clement bill.
Hell yeah.
And you could write it so that it calls for a caricature, just so that some idiot can come forward with an amendment to your bill and actually offer up the picture from your driver's license.
I mean, the first line would be, "We, the Senate, are resolved in that the weed has been freed."
Right.
That'd be the first line.
We're paying a kickback to Portal 420 so they can scan our cards and keep it on their database and everything. Whereas we could just send it over and be done with it. It's been a hustle. It's been a big I think it's a drain on the budget, man, Because you go to my weed shop, I got to give them my card. They got to get my license. They scan it up and put it in a little database there, and they match them up. And then they read the license plate number off the back of your driver license. Then they find you. It's a hustle. Let's get the picture on, man. So,
Richard's been saying that for 12 years now.
12 years.
Well, it's a stupid. For 12 years, we've had an empty space on the cart. If you're not going to put a picture there, find a better use for the space, right?
Well, at least take the words off that imply a photo goes there.
We have failed to obtain a photo for you.
Look at that photo there. There's the photo.
Richard worked in IT for the state of Michigan, so he actually knows the very software how it would be done.
The problem isn't the software. The problem, once again, no offense to my longtime friend, is the legislature. The problem is the legislature. They need a law that allows that to happen. Currently, they don't have one.
They got a law. They need a memo. They need a memo, man.
No, they're barred from using the driver's license file.
That's a crock of BS.
They can't integrate the state driver's database with the cannabis, and we don't really want them to either.
Correct. Well, but it'd be nice. It'd be nice if the Lara was given a file maybe every so often of the current photos so that they could put them in the cards. Well, I mean, it could be done.
I mean, think of how often you have to change Jeff Irwin's picture, though. I mean, he's got a beard. He doesn't have a beard. He's got.
To be honest, it's nice. It's nice to be able to use Richard's card at the dispensary and not have to show a picture on it, because it's hard for me to get by claiming I'm Richard Clement. But if you don't put a picture on it, I'm good. As soon as you put a picture on it, I'm in trouble.
Hey, Rudy Giuliani just pictured that as fraud. You're now in trouble.
Oh yeah, he gonna come back on you for that one, man. Yeah.
Oh, don't get me started on that douchebag.
Says the Reverend.
They brought COVID, man. Brought that COVID.
He's in my prayers.
Yeah, well.
Get the IT chick out of here too.
Yeah. No, so just to say, we're now being joined by the man, the legend, John Sinclair.
All right.
Take yourself off mute, John. Take yourself off mute, John. We love you.
All right.
There we go.
All right. It was either you or Santa Claus. I was betting on you, but
I forgot all about this. I was working on my radio program, and I took my pills and I took my shot of insulin. I was taking my mail and I saw wanted to join you. So here I am.
It's all good, John. It's all
Thanks,
good.
John.
I already did a poetry reading today on Zoom with MLE Board and his people.
Oh,
Yesterday, hey Adam, what's up, babe?
what's happening, boss?
I wanted to tell you I got straight with the guy with the gummies.
Yeah, I heard about that.
I got $100 worth. It'll last me for about 40 days.
Good deal.
Yeah,
I got you.
thanks.
Sorry. Yeah.
It looks like a charm. Yesterday I did a poetry reading with Ed Sanders.
Yeah.
Some people in New York, and we alternated verses back and forth. It was really killer.
Nice.
In case you guys don't know, Ed Sanders is really who helped to make John Sinclair a national name.
Wow, there's my mentor.
Right.
I followed him. And him and Allen Ginsberg started the marijuana movement. In 1965. They had the first marijuana rally in New York City for New York Lemar. You've seen the picture of Allen Ginsberg with the sign saying, "Pot is fun." That was from the first. That was from the first. Hey, Pat, what's up, baby?
Hey, John.
Hey. Nice to see you.
Hey,
You too. You talking about Lemar?
Yeah.
That was the precursor to NORML, huh?
Yeah.
It was.
No.
What did you say were the people who
NORML? A Morphia.
Morphia, right.
Morphia. They're the ones who were selling the rolling papers, right?
Yeah, we invented the rolling papers made out of hemp that bankrupted the organization. Seemed to be very important at the time, but it ruined the fucking. It was.
Hey, John, do you remember the time we pushed the cops all the way back to the water?
Where?
There in down by Detroit somewhere. I thought it was, or maybe it was Ann Arbor. I just remember one time we there was so many of us that we actually pushed the cops back into the water.
Oh, good. I don't remember that, but I wish I did. I must have been high.
That sounds like something that would have been at one of those city parks in Ann Arbor. I never went to any of. I mean, I didn't know you then. There.
Free concerts in the park. That was the high point of Western civilization. Nothing's greater than a free concert in the park. We had.
I think it was Ann Arbor.
Free concert in the park with marijuana.
I can't imagine.
You're right. It doesn't get
Detroit
much better.
I can't imagine Detroit police consenting to be pushed into the water without firing a few shots.
cops need weed.
Yep. Hey, I was just thinking as I was walking in and out of the house, one of the persons that we haven't paid attention to tonight, Deborah Young. And I know John Sinclair.
Yeah.
You know, we talk about Deb. She spearheaded all those Oakland County campaigns, but well after that, she's demonstrated herself to be a compassionate caregiver and a wonderful person.
Right. I have another name. Please, I must insist that we recognize another hero. Okay?
Tim Beck.
And thank you, John. Nice to see everyone. Yeah, Andrew Sissel. I know Andrew Sissel's unpopular, you know, in some quarters. But, I mean, he really worked with Deborah Young. I mean, he was a SIG gathering dynamo. Oh, my God, this guy could get signatures. Bam, 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 bam. You know, he's, you know,
I just have to say that watching the chat, when Deborah Young's name was mentioned, 1,000,000 hearts went up. When Andrew Sissel's name was mentioned, some frowny faces went up.
Well, somebody feels don't like him, and I got accused of not endorsing the Democrat Party candidate.
I thought it's true that whole campaign was based around all the southern Oakland County cities getting some type of legalization measure, lowest level law enforcement priority or something, was part of Andrew's campaign to run for House representative. It's one of the reasons why all those were put together back to back like that.
Well, that might have been his
Don't forget Tim
motivation.
Beck.
So who cares? He got the signature.
Don't forget Tim Beck.
Yeah.
I wasn't putting them down or anything. I was just explaining what happened.
But the fact is, Andrew Sissel was convicted of elections fraud, and he kind of gave us a bad name, and he had collected all these signatures, and then got zapped for lying. So
Nobody cares. Nobody cares.
Wait a minute. First of all,
maybe some people do, but if it wasn't for Andrew Sissel specifically, the SIGs would not have been gathered. That is my, strong belief. So it's almost irrelevant. I mean, he did something good in his life.
And I would point out in this modern era, Andrew Sissel got caught. Andrew Sissel did not do anything out of the ordinary.
Yep. I don't fault him for trying to get something accomplished, but you have to do it through proper process, or else you bring the group down. We've seen a lot of people, that maybe tried to cut corners, and then the media just jumped on it to say, "See, told ya, those potheads." So
it doesn't matter. They won. They won. That's the whole thing.
We did. We did. Yes. I mean, all those Oakland County communities, and really, this was revolutionary. We talk about Andrew and Deborah.
Now.
Yeah, but I mean, all of those lower Oakland County communities, they really did. Because Oakland County hates cannabis, and it did. But we now have a new prosecutor in Oakland County, so that's likely to make things better.
Yeah, well, we'll see how she reassigns Beth Hand and see what happens.
If you'd like to, by the way, you can go into the chat log, and Robin Schneider has posted a link to donate for Jeff Irwin for Senate and the fund that he has. Thank you very much, Robin Schneider. She was a guest on this evening's program and still keeping an eye on us afterwards. Thank you.
John Schlicker is another person we have to thank in the Northeast NORML chapter.
He's been on there tonight too. The Northeast NORML chapter is one of the most active chapters we have. Benzonia, Northeast NORML, and Motor City.
Yeah,
Somebody,
a lot of great work up there.
Nobody's mentioned that really helped to get us where we are today, and was a catalyst in many ways, would be Tom and Raleigh, and they should be mentioned on today's broadcast.
Absolutely.
Because many people don't realize that Rainbow Farm was actually funding the PRA, and it was the PRA that got the ball rolling for this volunteer effort, which got us where we are today. So
yes, it did, Adam. Yes, it did.
What about, man, we talked about getting a historical state marker at Rainbow Farms.
What about we set up a GoFundMe and buy a piece of that land and put a smoking lounge in there?
Wow. You can't.
Well,
private property. Private property. Now, damn it, the ranch has been sold off. It is gone now. You're never gonna get your dirty hands on it, you hippies.
Everybody's so broke now. Fuck them.
Hey.
Well, they split up the land or something, right?
Yeah, it's been split up into like 5 parcels.
Okay.
And it's my understanding that nothing can be really done with it, that the people that have it now are trying, but building on it's a problem, and
that's bullshit.
Facilities.
They still keep the original stage there in good shape.
Is the stage there?
The original stage is.
The original stage is still standing and in good shape.
I'll tell you what, that's a state historical marker. That should be a historical land.
When people come to appreciate our culture and its history, the history of the cannabis industry in Michigan, that's one of the things, like the Park Davis Hotel with the hemp industry from the 30s, that gets notoriety, but the things that revolve around the counterculture lifestyle from the 60s to the 2020s, we don't have anything. We need to. We need to make sure
this out.
Hey, let's buy that farm.
To come up to ever be like us ever again.
Yeah.
That's your goal.
Yeah. So, and remember,
race from history.
If we don't remember our heroes, no one will. If we don't.
That's right.
Do that.
I got a question for Mr. Irwin. Jeff, do you think there's going to be any action in lame duck, on anything? you know, that's a big mystery to some people. You know, I mean, between now and the end of the year, you know, on marijuana.
I don't think there's going to be anything in the Michigan legislature that's going to pass on cannabis law reform, except for, of course, there are a number of bills that are related to criminal justice reform more generally that I think are important to the cannabis law reform community. There's a whole bunch of bills that came out of the jail and pretrial task force that deal with trying to keep people away from senseless arrests. For instance, I have one bill in that package that has been voted out of the Senate with a big majority, and that's over in the House, Senate Bill 1047, that reduces the sort of use of automatic warrants when people have a failure to appear. It encourages the courts to use summons, and it creates grace periods for people to come in and take care of a failure to appear if they have a first-time failure to appear. And a ton of the people who are in jail right now are just there because they've failed to appear once. You know, so anyway, there's all sorts of bills like that. And there's another one I think that I don't remember the number of off the top of my head that I think is important to this community, which is it says that your conditions of parole have to be, of probation and parole have to be related to the crime you committed. And I think there's a ton of folks who've gotten caught up in a situation where, you know, the court orders them to do some sort of drug testing because of a crime that has nothing to do with that. And then that ends up getting them caught into a greater web of the criminal justice system, and it ends up ensnaring them and, you know, their whole life in that system, which is not good for the taxpayers and not good for them. So there's a lot of good stuff happening. What's that?
They get to go to treatment and be cured.
It's a bad alternative.
So, you know, the conditions of probation and parole should really be related to your crime. So there's all sorts of good things like that happening.
And speaking of crimes, you know,
just
Oregon.
Just please. Okay. All right. I agree with that. But do you think in lame duck, you know, there will be anything that's, you know, that's going to happen? I mean, again, I think we can agree that there's a kind of like bipartisan, you know, idea of getting this criminal justice thing under control. I'm just asking about lame duck. I mean, I support whatever you support.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about in terms of lame duck. Those are bills that all could happen before the end of the year. They're either going to live or die before the end of this year. You know, but if you're going to kick the mic to me again, I'm going to talk about what's happening in D.C. right now. I don't know if you've talked about this yet. You know, I came kind of late, so I don't know which people, you know, sort of heroes you've recognized or not, but there's action going on in D.C. right now, of course, talk about federal legalization, and whatever happens with that, without getting into the details of that, the one thing I want to say is, isn't it interesting that we're in this time right now where in our state, it's legal, and in, you know, federally, it's not yet legal. So we're in this weird limbo period. And, you know, I think eventually it's going to be legal federally. I think especially once states like Ohio and a couple other big states adopt it, the water is going to be over the waterfall and the federal government's going to have to adopt it. I think we're going to get banking soon. But in the meantime, I think it's kind of interesting that we're in this limbo period. And I almost think it's kind of, there are aspects of it that I think someday we're going to miss. Sort of like, you know, some days we miss the good old days of, you know, the cannabis legalization movement when it was still a gray market and people were, you know, sort of feeling out, you know, what it was like to operate in the state with a medical marijuana law, you know, so, you know, that federal tax probably will someday come, but right now it's not, you know, that's just kind of an obvious example. I think there are others.
I think we oftentimes think of the glory period of the medical cannabis period, you know, from 2010 really on to maybe 16, where we had just a ton of unregulated dispensaries throughout the state, 500 at one estimate, you know, 300 just in the city of Detroit alone. And that was a golden period there. And then regulation came in and stuff changed. Now we're in sort of a golden period of state regulation only in the absence of federal regs. And we'll have a golden period now too, right up until the time when the feds come in, and then it will be less fun. So that is likely to happen. The MORE Act actually proposes, we talked about this earlier, proposes a couple things we really don't care for, including a tax that ranges from 5 to 8% on cannabis sales across the United States, and also a prohibition on anyone that's ever been even investigated for a cannabis crime from being in business ownership or principles of the industry. So it's
Take
terrible.
that out of the Senate.
Terrible. So we have those things we have to overcome before the MORE Act really can get my endorsement.
Well, check this out. We could still, you need, what, 38 states to amend the Bill of Rights, the Constitution. So I'm thinking maybe I could get my rep to start something up to say, hey, let's be one of the states to amend the United States the 28th Amendment, okay? The Hemp Act. You know, hemp is a right.
I mean, we have 2 amendments dealing with alcohol.
Yeah, baby.
Right. Right.
I like it that Richard thinks big, you know? He doesn't fuck around. Like, let's go right to the constitutional amendment.
Just change
yeah,
some,
baby.
you know?
John Sinclair loves it. Says, yeah, that's right. So the fact is, I mean, on a planetary scale, cannabis is moving forward at a light speed pace, and we're moving forward at a mud truck's pace, right? I mean, we got the big tractor wheels, we're kicking up a lot of dirt, but we're not really going forward so much. And other places are forming international treaties, they're forming lasting bonds, and we're missing out on that entire marketplace.
With us.
Yeah, the WHO just freed it. The WHO just decriminalized marijuana. So
well, not exactly, and they did not allow member nations to remain in compliance while still having legalization in their nation. Now, naturally, Mexico, Canada, they don't seem to give a shit, but they didn't do. There were 6 recommendations the World Health Organization made to the UN. The UN adopted 1. So, I mean, progress, yes, but not what it could have been.
Yeah, fuck the FDA.
They not.
Yes, they're really harsh.
They're full of shit. They missed a COVID vaccine in 1 year. COVID vaccine in 1 year. And their only bullshit excuse about weed, they need more research.
Well,
you know, it's time to call bullshit on all of them.
Senator Irwin, do you see this action from the MRA coming back next session, where they try to combine the 2 systems? You know, it's probably going to take some sort of legislative action, isn't it?
Yeah, I do. Absolutely. And that's one of the reasons why earlier I said, you know, I think we need to, you know, take those suggestions seriously and make suggestions of our own. For instance, one of the things that is, I think, clearly superior about Proposal 1 versus the law that the legislature passed around medical is that we don't have restrictions under the People's Act for folks who have a previous criminal record for cannabis getting involved in the industry, whereas there are restrictions in the medical law. Those restrictions aren't sensible. They're not supported by the public. I actually don't think they're supported by a majority of the legislature. So if we take up an effort to, you know, combine the acts, that gives us a chance to fix that. And, you know, there are other reasons, I think, to do that. You know, one of the benefits is that I think that from a customer-focused perspective, we should want the system to work in a way where when a customer walks into any sort of establishment, they can buy whatever product they want. And if they have a medical card, they show that card and they get it tax-free or without the excise tax. And if they don't have a medical card, they don't. And this whole idea of having separate counters is probably not a sensible long-term thing. You know, I mean, I appreciate other people's feedback on that, but that seems like it'd probably be better for consumers just to sort of combine all of that. So there's, you know, I think there are some things that could be positive out of it, but obviously there are things that could be negative, right? Anytime something happens in Lansing, you know, we need to be watching over the shoulders of all of our elected officials to make sure that whatever changes are proposed are in the public interest. So yeah, I mean, I think it will come back for sure.
So I'd just like to announce that joining us now is a very Merry Christmas, Brandy Zink. Brandy,
Brandy Zink in the house.
Hey, Brandy.
Brandy, you're on mute, so you can.
Yeah. Brandy, just to inform you.
Hello.
Brandy,
yes.
you need to pay attention here. We were talking about you.
I
we
had
were.
a little birdie
Earlier in the show. Early in the show,
said.
your name came up. Yes, it did. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
you're on the roll of honor. You know.
Now you've been brought on to settle a bet.
Well, I should have been on the Lions today, you know, because that who would have thunk the Lions? We could make a bet on that.
Good to see you, Brandy.
Oh, lion.
Hey, Brandy Zink. Hey, Senator Irwin, let's go back to what we were talking about. So when this gets reopened next year and they start negotiating the details, should caregivers be worried about potential changes in the big scheme of things.
Yes, I think so. I mean, I think caregivers should be concerned about changes to the MMMA getting folded into this somehow. I think that would, make it more difficult to pass, but you never know, right? If you're talking about amending MIRTMA in some way, well, then you're already talking about a 3/4 majority anyway.
Right.
So having said that, I also think that one of the things that has been sort of a failure or a deficiency of the way that we've transitioned over these years is that caregivers, were really left out of the 2016 Act. And there was an effort at that time to completely get rid of caregivers. And that wasn't successful, but I do think that the folks who were engaged in that effort were successful at cutting caregivers out of the market in any sort of sensible way. And so, that's one of the things I think that caregivers should be fighting for with their elected officials is, there should be some sort of sensible way for them to participate. And at least what I've tried to preach to my colleagues is that it makes sense for the public to have a sensible way for caregivers to participate in the market, because otherwise that product's getting created. And so we should make sure that it gets to folks who want it and create a path for that to happen. And, a lot of folks feel that, that product should all be tested. Sure, let's get it tested. Let's create a sensible way for that to all happen. And I see a lot of paths for that. But the reality is that there are folks who have been trying to cut the caregivers out, and there's a fight over that. So, once again, I would always encourage folks to, just build a relationship with their elected officials. Tell them exactly what it is you want. Ask them what they think about the specifics of these issues.
If they cut the
Well, I have a question, if I may, to ask the representative.
The senator, sure, yeah.
Oh, yes, Senator Irwin. Yes, I was thinking Congress, like for next time when maybe he'll well, we have a good rep in so many areas in Michigan. We have really good representation in the federal level, believe it or not, in Michigan. I have worked 20 years on medical cannabis, and this is the first year in 20 I haven't been able to go to the Capitol because of COVID, and we might be disappointed in the language or the specifics of the MORE Act, but realize it's a product of over 20 years that this specific federal action to recognize the states' rights. Michigan has incredible states' rights, the fact that we can grow, and that is a concern because of the commercial loss of tax dollars, or, it creates a gray market, etc. But what would make our legislators comfortable with a standard of quality assurance for patients and proper labeling, etc., that isn't going to be burdensome to the mom and pop or the caregiver? We have caregivers' rights for so many reasons that Michigan is unique in our rights here, and other states that tried to do medical cannabis later, they took away this right. So this is something that Michigan is revolutionary, and we must preserve and protect is the ability for patients and caregivers and the individual to grow.
Amen.
And if they cut the caregivers out, the green market is going to thrive. It's continuing to thrive. I don't like calling it the black market. I call it the green market.
Green market.
I say gray. I say gray.
Unregulated market is
I'm
just
all about the gray hair right now. I didn't mean the underground or black market, but maybe my question back is how do we create some sort of standard? And I think that there is an answer here through the American Herbal Pharmacopoeia has the standard that's been established in other states, and I want to encourage the people of Michigan to embrace what is working well with others. And so we have a national standard that that wherever you go, if you're traveling, or that we all if you live in Alabama or Oklahoma, Utah, or wherever you live, you should have the same right as someone in Michigan. And maybe there's states and federal rights that differ here, but I do feel it's fundamentally important that across the United States, if you consume cannabis for medicine, you need to have the same rights wherever you go, just like when you carry your asthma inhaler or your insulin medicine, your heart medication, or wherever you go, it's the same.
The difference is we're the bastard of the drug world and we get taxed. We're the only drug that gets taxed.
I feel for medical patients, then we need to have insurance pay for it. We need to have it tax-free. And so that's why I feel that there are certain reasons why medical cannabis differs from adult use, and why there are places where the merging of the program will be beneficial, but in other aspects, it will hurt the patients. And remember, patients were the reason why we were the gateway to have legal marijuana. And I don't want anybody to stand on our shoulders so far down that we're squished and forgotten about. I want to make sure that patients are on the front of being preserved for their rights, and recognize that now everybody who's an adult in Michigan has the freedom to heal and use cannabis for wellness or enjoyment or responsible use. And I'll step off my soapbox.
So you know, we have to work with you on the specifics of whatever comes forward, you know, in terms of you know, what's good or not for patients, and I'd be happy to hear you out. Are you asking about a set of testing rules and regulations for caregivers, or are you suggesting that the rules and regulations for medical cannabis in Michigan be aligned with some sort of national or international standard?
I think that I'm asking for Michigan to create, like, if you have a commercial license or any kind of other small batch, when you're serving or giving a product out to the consumer, that it has a standard. If you're your own patient or your 5 patients as a caregiver, I don't think that you should step into that realm. But when it's offered into professional or commercial use, then there should be a standard, and it shouldn't be oppressive. It doesn't need to be oppressive. We have, you know, you can sell your chamomile, and you can sell your other, you know, tomatoes or what have you from your yard. That's different than if you have a farm. And so keeping that in mind, the cannabis as medicine for individuals shouldn't have to be the same standard, but the commercial standard doesn't need to be rigorous or oppressive. Look at the American Herbal Product Association and their guidelines for how to regulate herbs.
Brandy, a national testing mandate for cannabis, is that what you're suggesting?
No, I am suggesting that cannabis be removed from the schedule and treated like other herbs. And so the guidance for how you grow and test and make a product that's consumable for people, the same as chamomile, St. John's wort, any of your other herbal medicines or supplements, that cannabis be treated the same.
And those have rules, though, right?
And they do, but they're not oppressive.
You're suggesting rules for cannabis.
The standards are based on the herbal pharmacopoeia, she was saying.
Yeah.
Yes, but that's rules for cannabis. So
commercial or professional production cannabis.
A national standard.
Personal use, individual use, man, you make it, you eat it. It's your personal. But if you want to be making money off of it commercially or professionally, then there ought to be standards. Yeah.
I mean, I have a question. I have a question for Brandy. Brandy, I have a question for you.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, why do you believe a national standard is good? Okay, as opposed to a local situation.
Well, if I'm buying Heinz ketchup in the Walmart,
are you advocating?
I want to know that what
Heinz
I'm getting
ketchup,
is the same product wherever I go. You know, yeah. I don't think that I urge you to take a look at the AHPA and their standards, and I think that everyone will agree that if you're buying a bottle of echinacea or a bottle of reishi mushroom or any other herbal remedy at the GNC, the Walmart, or wherever you buy it, it's, you know that there's a standardized, you know that it's whatever milligrams.
We're not talking about Walmart, though.
Agreed.
Are we wrong? Are we talking about Walmart here?
Wherever cannabis is a medicine,
I don't think we want
CBD,
that.
THC, whatever.
I'm gonna go to McDonald's, get some weed.
I go in the Mickey D's parking lot. There you go, Richard. Oh my God, I had to go in the hood back in the late 1980s when there are a lot of us being banned, and there's a lot of drugs in this country. I had to go down to the hood.
Yeah, I mean, he's talking about a
Just need to
national
move it from the parking lot.
franchise, man.
I want a Mick Cush burger. That's what I want. Yeah. Special sauce all up in that shit. Yeah. All right. So, but the fact is, I mean, I made.
You want fries with that? Of course.
Yeah. Double fries. The fact is, though, the conversation about national standards is not one that's being held just on this teleconference. I myself, I don't think that national standards are applicable at this point. You have each individual state making their own rules about things. Trying to impose one standard that goes across all 50 states plus the territories seems like something that's already not been accomplished, and for very good reason. But ideally, on a long-term level, if medical would be to be embraced, or if legalization were to be embraced on a federal level, they're going to have a tax all the way across. They'll have other rules that go all the way across. When that happens, that would be the only time you'd get those type of regs. And I think that's probably far in the future.
I think Brandy's arguing the regulated, like tomatoes approach, where there are standards, but they're not oppressive, as she said. But Brandy,
Thank you, Mr. Abel. I agree with you.
Yeah, except cannabis has THC in it, which might be psychoactive, and so we do pay special attention to things. And there are taxes on alcohol and tobacco in our country. I mean, on a side tangent, when we were talking about taxes.
But those are sin taxes. Those are sin taxes. Marijuana is not sin taxed anyway.
All right, we'll call it a happy tax. So you feel better?
How about we don't tax medicine? Let's start with that.
Well, if you define cannabis as an adult use recreational drug, then it's not medicine any longer. Adult use means we don't get that argument any longer.
You talking about the 6% sales tax, Adam, on dispensary product?
When it is going to be
okay. Well, personally, I was talking at the moment about medical. I don't believe medical should be taxed at all. Period.
It is. It's got a 6% sales tax, right?
Correct. It shouldn't be medical. Medicine is not taxed in Michigan. Only this one medicine is taxed. You know what? Listen, I'm a 2-time cancer
that sounds
survivor.
Like a lawsuit
they should tax cancer drugs before they should tax marijuana. They should tax diabetes drugs before they tax marijuana. They should tax all kinds of drugs before they tax marijuana. If we're going to call it a drug. Now, the adult use thing, that's a sin tax. I don't care what they say. Hell, we were proposing pot for potholes at one point.
Yeah, we still are, man.
I like that idea.
Some of you are.
Hell
Listen,
yeah.
I don't believe these legislature, and no offense to my good friend once again, I don't believe these legislature idiots should have the use of our tax dollars on things that they fought us on for so many years. I'd have no problem putting all this money into an account somewhere and waiting 20 years till all of these idiots that voted no are no longer part of the legislature. And now that money gets to be used by the legislature and the budget looks good. If the governor had fixed the roads on the backs of marijuana people, we still have people in prison over this. How do you make sense of that? That's my issue.
Well,
Hey, Mike Thompson.
Hey,
What's
good
that?
to see everybody. Happy anniversary, everybody.
Hi, Tom.
Oh, this is the anniversary.
Oh, thank you, Tom.
Today is the 2-year anniversary of personal freedoms, December 6th, 2018.
Happy anniversary.
See your face,
Yeah,
Tom.
that's a perfect segue to what I was trying to say to make my exit, which is that, we're here. I'm hearing folks, honoring a lot of the heroes, folks who've put in time to reform our cannabis laws. And one of the things I'm still eager to hear more about are some of our, folks, some of our cannabis reform heroes who are still in prison right now. There has been a tremendous effort around Michael Thompson. I just really appreciate all the folks who put a tremendous amount of effort into trying to get that gentleman out of prison. He's been there too long. And, I would just encourage folks who, know of other individuals who are still in Michigan prisons based on some sort of cannabis related case. bring those folks forward, identify them to me, identify them to other folks who are out there who are helping individuals get exonerated and get out who are in prison still for cannabis crimes. There aren't a ton. I know that there, you have to find folks who have some slightly more complex cases than just cannabis crimes per se, but there are still folks in prison right now in Michigan, 2 years later, who fundamentally what it was that they're in prison for is just marijuana. And we need to identify those individuals and get them out. So if folks know of those folks who are still doing time, identify them to me. I'll try to use my resources to, let the department know, let the governor know, let my colleagues know that those individuals are still in there. Because at the beginning of my time in Lansing, 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, we introduced legislation to try to, exonerate and get out these folks who are still in prison for cannabis crimes. But that legislation didn't move. Because we just couldn't get attention for it. We couldn't get enough folks identified who would be affected by it. Folks sort of thought this issue is solved. Well, it's not quite totally solved. There's still a couple folks who we need to identify. So help me do that. Thanks for celebrating with me. Thanks for being part of this important change in our state.
Thank you, Senator Irwin.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
Hey, right. Well, Dana Nussel got that list already.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
She already has that list. She already has that list of names.
Mm-hmm.
And she's went through a bunch of cases already. She's a big resource, Senator Irwin. Man, go check out.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, at the Michigan Cannabis Prisoner Relief Project, Michigan Cannabis Prisoner Relief Project is Redemption Cannabis plus the Cannabis Caucus of the Michigan Democratic Party plus Last Prisoner Project, several other groups too, trying to free Michael Thompson, Rudy Gammo, several others. I know we spoke about that earlier, but we've been going at this for more than 3 hours, almost bumping up for a long time. So maybe people have just tuned in and may have missed that conversation earlier, but Michael Thompson did have a parole board hearing. It was not that long ago. I testified, 13 people testified on his behalf. Nobody testified against Michael Thompson, and that was the official time for them to do so. Now the parole board will have their hearing when they're ready, after they get the transcript of that proceeding, and then they'll be able to decide whether they want to recommend parole or not recommend parole. Once they get that decision, then the governor has some freedoms to act, to commute the sentence, or to grant parole. So,
and regardless of what their opinion is, the governor has the ability to do whatever she wants. Yep. This is actually just a formality. And the reason this formality is happening is because the governor's office wanted it to.
Well, the fact is, this is an obstruction that was intentionally put in place by the legislature to stop people from being able to do exactly what we're trying to do. They wanted to keep people in jail, so they made parole extremely fucking hard. And this is one of the ways in which they made parole extremely fucking hard.
You need to email him, have like a call in, like Lee Chatfield, march up to his office with doobies and shit. Sharky. Hey, come on now.
Hey, Richard, I had an idea maybe you'd be interested in. Remember when all them dudes went to the Capitol with guns?
Yeah.
What if we showed up with doobies?
That's right.
Pulled them out of our pocket and smoked out the Capitol.
There you go.
Doobies on holsters. Doobies with arm straps. Big ass.
Yeah. There used to be a guy by the name of the Lone Reefer that used to show up at the hash patch, and he had holsters on his belt. And he used to have doobies in there, and he'd throw them out to the crowd. And that cat was awesome.
That'd be perfect for Mike Shirky. That'd be perfect for Lee Chatfield.
I got a doobie inside of a Frisbee from the Lone Reefer at one of the hash bashes where we had to go to the Huron Park or whatever.
The Fuller Park event.
Yeah.
Boy, that event was great.
The giant, 3-ounce.
Fucking Lee Chatfield house.
Did you see that protesters gathered outside? Protesters gathered outside of Jocelyn Benson's house to protest the election results the other night. At night with guns at her, chanting at her front door. Wow.
And they did that to Cynthia Johnson too.
Yeah, so she has the stand your ground rights, right? Like, why doesn't she come out with her AK?
Well, They got more guns than she does. That'd be a stupid idea.
So,
Because-
kind of toward the end of this whole thing, we've been joined by Berg from Medical Mondays.
What's up,
We
big
got
man?
a little off topic there.
What's up, Bird?
Yeah,
Oh yeah, you wanna introduce me when you start talking about guns? I see.
That's right, Bird. Better you than me, bro.
oh, it's my both 5 Tap Detroit old school. Okay. Hey, Bird.
What you smoking on, Bird?
I'm
Yeah.
rolling up them Skittles by Michigan Turf Farms.
Oh.
By the way,
A bird.
our chat is full of things like I agree with Adam, I agree with Brandy, I agree with Brandy, I agree with Adam. Apparently, Brandy and Adam are the two consensus winners on opinions tonight. I just have to say.
Can I get names for those who agree with me, please? Can you
Yeah,
send me the
This
list?
is a big event for Adam.
Adam,
Truly
this
is a
is not
celebration.
Tinder, Adam. This is not Tinder, man. Come on, I'm not hooking you
Hey
up.
man, I'm barred from Tinder. My Tinder
I'm with
account got
Adam.
fouled.
How bad do you have to be to get barred from Tinder? Holy shit.
Dude, I have the greatest Tinder story of all times. My
Maybe-
Tinder account got hacked and they switched me from a male to a female and my account exploded with anyways. It was
hacked. It got hacked.
Dr. Tinder switched him from a male to a female. I don't know. Sure. Okay.
There's all kinds of stuff.
So-
I got a thing here. I got to share this brief. I'll be brief. Okay, I got a real story here. It's the real thing. This is an individual that is on the Southern Poverty Law Center watch list. Yes, he's so terrible. And he's on the watch because he's deliberately provocative. He wants to be on the watch list. He wants to be infamous. You know, and his problem, according to the listserv, is he's anti-Semitic and homophobic. Okay, so that's his thing. I mean, he's really, like out there about it, and it's like he just don't even care, and it's a thing where, but he just does that deliberately. He's not some violent individual. It's kind of funny, but like I say, he made the list. I'm kind of impressed in a strange way that you could, I mean, if you're that, well, how do you get on the list? But, anyway, I have, there's a thing. I mean, we've had a lot of radicals here in our group. I mean, it's really, it goes way back, dang it. I mean, I got another person for the role of honor. Okay. The name is Chad Morrow. Guadalupe. I mean, hey, come on. These demonstrations you had up north and Gaylord. Jamie, you were there. I know you're sort of chuckling now, but I remember, you were there. You saw that.
I'm a fan of Chad's to a degree. I like a lot of the stuff that he's done. There's no question about that. And he's had to go pay for stuff that he shouldn't have, in the legal system and that kind of stuff.
A true radical. I mean, you got to respect him. I mean, some people anyway. I mean, he sounds extreme, but man, this guy is like, whoa.
No, he's put himself out there to try to do a lot of stuff, man.
I went to his trial. There was a demonstration, and people wanted to, try to, keep from passing literature and stuff like that. It was really, he really stood up to the system. I think, and that's what it seems to me anyway. And Darren McCarty, fucking A. Darren McCarty, that's another hero. I just wrote it down, Darren McCarty. Jamie, I think you arranged that. The legend has it anyway.
Darren McCarty.
As long as we're still
Oh yeah,
out.
he's awesome.
Kirk Gibson.
Yeah, Kirk Gibson.
Yeah, Kirk Gibson.
As long as we're throwing out names, let's not forget Laura and Matt Barber. Let's not forget RG.
Oh.
And I know Brad Forrester's on here.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
How
about the name? Here's one for you.
Randy and Lori. And I think of Randy and Lori Krause, who opened up their East Bay Lodge to us for all those years.
Oh, yeah.
How about this name? How about Chuck Kyle?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, how about Chuck Kyle's son, Curtis? Curtis rode a wheelchair from Monroe, Michigan, all the way to Washington, D.C. to support cannabis law reform issues covered by USA Today and the press. So, I mean, Chuck.
We tracked him on Planet Green Trees on his way there and back, too. Yeah.
Yep.
You know, another thing that it's really not cannabis related, but it really is pretty darn important. Mr. Tim Beck, his daughter was recently named a prima ballerina in Russia. A prima. I mean, that's like the top of the heap, man.
Considering the fact that her old man's the godfather of weed back home, yeah.
Yeah.
Congratulations,
that is so
Tim.
cool.
So, thank you. I didn't post that. Thank you for. Yeah, right on. Well, yeah. I don't know.
Congrats, Dad. You know, Dad gets just as proud of the daughter's accomplishment as she does, I think, sometimes.
Damn right. So, and one other question that's been on my mind for like weeks now, Adam, Nick, is there going to be a hash bash in 2021 in April?
Yeah, there's got to be. I mean, there's got to be a hash bash, and I think that you got a lot of ideas, and hoping to get some talks started and things formalized soon. But
not a big not a big physical gathering though.
No, it's going to be. I mean, there's going to, I don't know what's, I don't think the university is going to allow anything just like they didn't last year. So, in a sense, like, we didn't have much say one way or the other, but we obviously canceled it. But if people gather. I don't know that they will, but we're definitely going to be planning for an online format and hopefully make it special and enticing.
But I would point out that the one thing allowed under all these health department rulings is protests. So this would be the 50th annual Ann Arbor Hash Bash. And the fact of the matter is, if you follow the CDC guidelines, there are ways to socially distance and appear in public. And we know a lot more than we did last year. We're also 3.5, 4 months out at this month, 3.5 months out. And we don't know what's going to happen. And unfortunately, we got a plan like it's going to happen. I just don't see the university issuing any permits for gatherings. That's kind of the one thing that they did right away, that they announced that they weren't issuing any permits, and they haven't done so yet. But the reality is it's hash bash and it doesn't require a permit. And I and a lot of people I know plan on being there, especially now that we know what we know. And I assume it'll come down to a bunch of masked up people standing 6 feet away from each other.
Yeah, I wonder how big it'll ultimately be, because I mean, there's still a lot of folks that normally would go that just won't, and but ultimately I don't have control one way or the other over what people do. But we definitely, like Adam said, like I think that all that we can do right now, not knowing what things are going to look like coming out of this winter, is just plan for a stellar online format. And it's a real travesty, I think, that this will be the 50th, no matter whether it's what it's looking like ultimately. But I know that as soon as we're able to get out of this and have a full-on in-person hash bash, as it's been done before, it's going to be really exciting. And once people are comfortable and the university's on board, it's going to be pretty awesome. But that's a little ways off, unfortunately.
I think it's going to be about another 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes, and then we're going to end the broadcast. So let's, if we could, how about if we have a little bit of a time for each one of the folks on the video here to just give a final thought about the last 10 years and 12 years, and maybe ideas for things going forward. Mr. Beck, let's start with you.
Well, I didn't think I was going to be the first to get hit on.
I will give some.
Go for it.
It's alphabetical. No, it's not alphabetical.
You're always the first to get hit on, aren't you?
You're my upper left-hand corner, so I started with you.
The Godfather.
Oh, thank you. Well, I try I've tried year after year, month after month, day after day to think positive, to try to look at the best possible scenario, and work to that. And it just seems we're really doing good here in Michigan, in this state. I think looking over the years, many years, John Sinclair was way before me, but again, coming on in 2001, it was tough. And we did this medical thing, and then there was a movement built out of it. Adam, you've been around a long time. Brandy, you were way the line, and back then, and prior to the 04 initiative, or 08 when medical was passed all across the state. Then activity really got going. It was before that was Michigan NORML. Other folks, like some of us on the show, were there, and then it just really started to take off. And so many great people came out of the woodwork. Some were there way before, that. But it just took on a life of its own, and it's just been so good. Michigan has been a wonderful state. I mean, in the sense that, okay, you look at infighting in Ohio, and Arizona, and stuff like that over the years, it just made things more and more difficult. Where I think the community here always had legitimate, differences of philosophy and, how do we handle this and where do we go and how do we get it done? And the great thing about it is that really we got it pretty good. We really did a very, very, very good job. I mean, everybody, there's just no, we just got the job done. We got a good law here. We got a good law. And the thing is, I'm not interested in any radical change, period. Right to grow, the caregiver system. I think the caregiver system will go down of its own accord, especially the so-called big marijuana and all that. But it's not to pass a law banning caregivers. Excuse me, fuck you. Okay.
Thank you.
Any law banning right to grow, fuck you.
Fuck you.
That's my deal. That's all, man. I love you all. I love you. That's what I'm just thinking right this moment. We got a lot to be happy about.
I love it. Thank you. Mr. John Sinclair, you, sir, are next. Would you share your thoughts with us as we close out the event?
Well, I go back to when marijuana was a narcotic. And where it's a city, smoking marijuana publicly was like putting a target on the middle of your back. That was a long time ago. We've come a long way. I think in the last 10 years or so, since 2008, we started to make some good steps forward. But we aren't anywhere near where we want to be when we say free the weed. We want weed to be like free.
Really?
Not a special tax issue, not a way for these pigs who will put us in prison for 80 years to make money off of us. I think that should be illegal, and I think they should be charged with crimes for doing this. That's what I think. I think the regulation that's needed is that which applies to carrots, tomatoes. It doesn't need any more than that. You don't have to have no special license to grow a motherfucking carrot. You grow a carrot because people want to eat some carrots and see better, So people want to grow some weed for medical reasons or to get high off of, or both in my case. I'm a patient who likes to get high. First off. Right, Matt?
Right on, John.
So I think you have to keep pushing at them to move the regulations back and to get marijuana completely out of the hands of the police and the state, and have a marijuana situation where if you want to grow some marijuana, then you pay taxes on what you sold it for, like another citizen who sold some carrots. That's where I think it should be at. I don't think there should be no special stuff. There should be no penalties. They should have amends, or what do you call it, reparations, for people like myself and the millions of others who have been violated by this system.
Reparations.
Reparations, there you go. So I still think we got a long way to go, and I think these police have, we were a gold mine to them. The war on drugs was like a license to print money for the police. And they gave them immense powers that had no business in America whatsoever. And it's going to be hard to strip them of these powers, even though the law, the legal underpinnings aren't there. They aren't really about the legal underpinnings. They're about that gun they got on their belt, you know, and how many of them there are, and how many cars they got, and tanks, and jails, and all this bullshit. So it's going to be a hard struggle to wrest control of weed completely from the creeps who gave us the problem for all these years. The media, we're doing okay with them. Now the media, the Detroit papers, they got people on the staff who are marijuana writers. Well, that's the way they should deal with it on the government issue.
Oh, fuck it, eh? That's funny. Really serious. I know what you're talking about exactly. It was a racket kind of thing.
A racket, you're right.
All right, John, if you're done, I'll move on to Reverend Steve.
Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. We appreciate all you've done and for being here tonight. Reverend Steve, I know that you're up in the north. You still connected with us, sir?
I am still connected, Rick, and I think the two most important things facing us right now as Michigan residents is definitely the importance of getting people like Michael Thompson released from prison. And right along with that, another important thing is to make sure that we keep putting cannabis-friendly people into places of power and protect our caregiver system. We should never lose the right or privilege of being able to legally grow our own or grow for our friends and neighbors if that's what we so desire to do. And then finally, I just want to leave you all with a question, or maybe something for you to think about. But we've been talking a lot about this up here in northern Michigan. Does anybody know anybody that uses cannabis on a regular basis that has contracted the COVID disease? That's something to think about.
I know Adam Brook has been asking this question, and I think
Yes, I do. I know lots of people. The issue isn't that. The question becomes, if they got it, how did they fare?
Yeah.
What did they go through? I actually have.
Adam, Adam, we're wrapping this up though. We don't have time to jump into another subject. I want to give everybody a moment to talk.
No
and when I get to you, I'm going to go to Richard Clement right now because he's got, he's in the car. I want to make sure he gets a chance to get inside if he wants to. Plus, he looked like he was falling asleep a minute ago. But the Detroit Lions shirt though is badass. Thank you for wearing that. It was a good game today.
Well, I got to thank my wife, Cynthia Willoughby there, and she said hello, Reverend Steve. And I'll tell you, this has been a little long journey from everybody like going to jail until now. We're almost like commonplace with the House with legislation coming through, the change in attitudes. Even on a national level, we're still making noise and influence, and I'm still gonna bitch about the picture, okay? I ain't giving them that shit. I mean, that's an insult to IT, man. But
right.
I'm looking at them filling up. I mean, looking at fix my damn street with hempcrete, stuff like that. I think this thing is gonna go exponentially. We open up a can of worms, and now the worms are gonna get different jobs and improve the quality of life in the cities, So, and plus we're gonna expunge free all federal pot prisoners. Okay, that's what we free all federal pot prisoners. If you got a Twitter account, light up Kamala and Joe and the rest of them. But in the end, we're going to have to amend the Constitution. We got enough states that we could force the federal government to do what we got to do, what we want. So with that being said, man, I'm going to probably, you know, let everybody else finish their bit, and I'm going to hit
Right
this
on,
dude.
Richard. My love to
Free the weed.
Free the weed, Richard.
Free the weed.
Free the weed.
Free the weed, people.
Matthew Abel, you are next, sir, on my wheel of talking.
Well, first, Rick Thompson, thank you very much for hosting this. You did a bang-up job and got to everybody and let everybody talk. And I don't know, you must not have let Nick Zettell talk, though. I mean, he's just been pretty quiet down in the corner here. I don't but hey,
Been listening.
It's cool to hear from everybody and to see everybody, especially John. I'm glad you were able to join us, pitch in on this. And it would take too long for me to talk about all the work that we've got left to do, but today's the day to celebrate the work that we've already done. So congratulations to all of us for getting this far. And, you know, let's keep going. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, Matt.
You're doing the Jazz Cabbage Café, so appreciate it.
Thanks.
It's so nice to see so many old friends and reminisce about others who couldn't join us.
Amen.
So we're go ahead, Rev. What do you got? Anyway, we'll go to Brad and then Adam. Brad?
Yeah.
Hey guys, Rick and Jamie, again, thank you for hosting this, putting this together. You know, really, I'd like to thank everybody for kind of accepting me into this, you know, movement and to be a part of this. I mean, this is an incredible thing to be a part of. I mean, literally changing history. And, you know, so, you know, thank all you guys for, just accepting who I am, what I do. And, you know, that's cool as hell. And I'll wrap it up real quickly here with a John Sinclair story, if you don't mind. It was maybe 2009 or 2010, shortly after the medical law was passed. And, you know, the big place back then was a place called Dr. Bob's on Woodward Avenue and 7 Mile or something. And, you know, I'm all anxious. I had traveled back and forth from Detroit to my home here in northern Michigan. And, you know, I had come back up here and I was in a hurry to get back to Detroit because everybody was getting together at Dr. Bob's at night. So I get in my little car and I drive 4.5 hours down to Detroit, and I pull up at Dr. Bob's place and I find a parking spot. And I am so anxious to smoke a joint because back then I was pretty paranoid to smoke and drive, and I didn't. So I get out of the car and I walk up to Dr. Bob's place, and there's this guy sitting there all by himself by the fire outside by the back door. So, man, I whip out a joint and I fire it up and I hand it to this guy. And the guy is sitting over here, John Sinclair. And I said, "Hi, how you doing? I'm Brad." And he says, "Yeah, my name's John." I didn't know John Sinclair from anybody at that point. But later that night, I'm not sure if it was Adam or somebody else introduced us. But, you know, that was kind of a thrill for me to meet somebody who I had known about, but I didn't really know. And so, you know, again, this is all a magical ride for me. Thank you guys. And let's kick some more ass and take this to where John wants to go. And that is, you know, and Richard, let's free the weed.
It's free the weed. Yes, indeed.
Good to see you, Brad.
All right, Adam, let's see what you got, big guy.
All right. Well, you know, we're talking about these last 10 years and 12 years, whatever. And you know, we do have a long way to go. We've moved the ball forward a great deal in these last 10 years. As someone who's been in this I've been doing this 30 years. I never expected that we would have moved as fast as we have. We've really got a lot of industry in place in this cannabis space, this weed space. You know, I tell people all the time, my movement has become their industry. And, you know, I don't have to like all the things about their industry. I did this stuff for other reasons. You know, I'm an activist type. I don't look at the accomplishments that any individual has made as moving the ball forward on their own. We've done this all as a team. There are no running backs in our game. There's some real dumbasses who have pulled some things that caused their name to become huge because they ended up in court, and, you know, all of a sudden there's a court case that went the right way, and now we praise these people for their name and their court case. But the reality is that this is a team effort, and our team has gotten in the last 10 years exponentially bigger. And that has made our fight somewhat easier. I like to point out that there was a time where we couldn't get any media exposure. Now the word weed, cannabis, marijuana, whatever, it's in the newspaper, it's on the TV, it's on the radio, everywhere in every community, all across the nation, every day. I said earlier that, you know, I was in this since the days of fax machines. We used to send 400 press releases out, hit a button. Man, it was great. When we got a fax machine that would actually send out 400 press releases hitting one button, and it was the same press release.
Store the numbers, yeah.
That was awesome, man. All of a sudden, we got 30 phone calls from the media. It didn't take a week of sending out. Every day we used to come in and send out faxes all day long. All of a sudden, got a new fax machine, hit a button. And then all of a sudden, this internet was happening, and you could research things. And it wasn't just reading stuff out of books. And the cool thing was, you could get information from other people. And one day somebody passed me the name John Sinclair. And I was able to reintroduce John Sinclair to the Michigan cannabis game, weed game. Bringing John to Hash Bash was a game changer, because this was 5 years before we started really doing anything in Michigan on a political level. And this enabled us to create this motion of historical activism. And, you know, it was huge. And now 10 years after we have some form of legalization, if you look back 10 years from now, I don't believe you'll think what we did the first 10 years was much of anything. I think we're going to do so much in the next 10 years and 20 years. I mean, the future is huge on this. To the point that someone mentioned COVID earlier, and I reached for it because I didn't want to forget it. But just recently, there's a study from the University of South Carolina about COVID and THC. Now, how much more relevant do you get than COVID and THC? So we're not on the come up anymore. We're there. So it's fun to be a part of that. I have to say that. I'm happy that, you know, I can call a lot of you people my friends, and the rest of you my acquaintances. And you know, it's fun to do this, because the reality is that this is about correcting wrongs, and this is about correcting what was done to people and how the government treated us over the last 80 years. And, you know, some of us are a little bitter about that, but we'll get there. So I appreciate that, John. John's been hearing me rant for years. So, you know, he smiles. I know I'm doing good. So.
Thank you, Adam.
We know, Adam, what keeps COVID from taking us down. We know.
Yeah. That's right. We're going to go to Brandy next, and then Nick. Brandy.
Oh, I'm so honored, and thank you so much. I'm so happy I moved to Michigan. I'm so inspired by what Michiganders have done with your coalitions and your true grit when you gathered signatures and you fought in the streets, you know, by your pen is mightier than the sword or your AK-47. You don't need to take that to the state house. You brought your clipboards and you rallied and you kept showing up, and I'm honored that I was able to be just a little part of that benefit of the power of the organizing, the deep grassroots that are here. And I want to thank all the women too, because I wasn't here earlier, so I don't know if they were thanked, but Melody Carr and Carol Reed and Renee Emery and so many other women. I want to thank them all too, because I don't see a lot of women in cannabis in the early days, and now we have more and more of them, and so Michigan has really done a grassroots effort to protect the rights of the grower and the patient and the caregiver and the true spirit of the freedom of cannabis. Truly, you have fought to free the weed. I am so in love with Michigan. Proud to live in Detroit. I'm proud to be part of this group that's keeping growing every day. You know, my 20 years of working in this, I never thought that we'd even see this day. So thank you, Michigan. I'm so proud of you, and your freedom is spreading better than COVID, because it's healing, it's blessing the world. Your true freedom that you've made here in Michigan, may it grow and grow and grow through across the universe. Thank you.
Thanks, Brandy. We can't forget Charlie from Monroe Street Fair.
Monroe Street Fair.
Exactly right. Nick, you're up, sir. Give us your final thoughts.
Yeah, thanks, Rick, for putting this together. You know, I know last year there was a celebration at Cannabis Council, and this year we're just making do with, you know, what we can. So it is still very important to commemorate this. And I've been kind of waxing nostalgic the whole time. Every time I hear a name, and so many have been dropped, and we've been able to acknowledge so many of the frontline warriors and, you know, the local celebrities of this movement. And I know that for everyone who's been mentioned and so many more who weren't mentioned, you know, we may not be able to say that, you know, they made it, any one individual made it happen, or it wouldn't have happened without them. But we know that it wouldn't have happened the way it did without any of these people. And so, you know, everyone has been very integral to this movement. I'm, you know, excited at, you know, just the possibilities, the limitless possibilities of what we can accomplish with reforming our broken criminal justice system and our fucked up drug laws, and hopefully move the conversation forward to restorative justice, to really suturing and healing these wounds, and also, you know, legalizing all drugs for personal use. You know, I think most of the things we've said about cannabis regarding that people shouldn't go to jail for simple possession, things like that, it applies across the board in my mind. And so we've still got a lot to do, but we're able to find that we can see now that it's possible, you know. You can work on a project and it can happen, and you can change reality around you, and it's really exciting. So I'm excited for it.
Thank you, Nick. How about if we go to the B, E, R to the F and G, Berg from Medical Mondays podcast. Let us know exactly what you're thinking right now. Next, hey, Richard.
Hey!
I hear it.
Go ahead, man.
The weed, the weed, the weed.
Breathe the weed. Breathe the weed.
Boys and men, we are not.
Breathe the weed.
Wow.
And it dissolves into chaos every time Berg's name is mentioned. Berg. So give us your thoughts, Berg, and then we're going to go to Jamie.
Well, I mean, I love the way weed's going, and I just hope it, you know, stays in the people's hands. People are able to fucking grow their own weed. You know, they shouldn't have to go to a store to fucking buy weed. I always think that, you know, quality craft weed is the best in my opinion. But I love the way that the UN, what was it, Wednesday? They're talking about reclassifying weed, you know. The World Health Organization is talking about reclassifying weed, so it's, you know, not in the same category as heroin and, you know, all that. So that's about it.
Appreciate
Yeah,
that.
man.
And Jamie Lowell, by the way. John Sinclair's giving you 2 fists up, Berg. Yes.
And Jamie Lowell too.
Oh, it was for Jamie.
Yeah, you assumed it was for Berg.
I
Nice.
did, yes.
Bird.
Bird.
Bird rules. No
I'm
question
with
about it.
Bird.
Medical Mondays is awesome. It's very fun. Well, I mean, thanks to Michigan NORML for doing this to help recognize tonight the significance of tonight, and obviously Rick for hosting. I had a good time. It felt like a celebration as intended, and I'll be around for a while to help do all the things that we still need to do to make this better.
That's a nice sentiment.
Amen.
Thank you, Jamie.
Yep. I'm just going to point out in my closing, we've now been talking for over 3 hours. We haven't praised the new business model yet. We haven't talked about the hundreds of retail centers that have been created through the legalization program. We haven't talked about these gigantic cultivation grows. Our joy is centered around the people. It's centered around the human beings that were involved in the actions that created the framework on which we are going to tread for the rest of the time that the cannabis industry exists in Michigan. The people are the foundation, and I think we have to always remember that. Tonight's been a celebration of individuals. Even though we talked about events, even though we mentioned companies, it's been about human beings. And as long as we continue to make that the subject of the conversation and not what's best for business, but what's best for the human beings, I think we're going to be in a pretty good place in Michigan. And that's the responsibility of every one of us to shepherd that process, to make sure the conversation stays about human beings and not about corporate profits.
Amen.
Here, here, Rick. Here, here.
John Sinclair.
Rick, thank you, Rick. Thank you, Rick. Thank you, Rick, for what you did, you know, in organizing this. This is really good. Very thank you for this. That's
appreciate it, Tim.
Tim, I got a question. What is it that we're celebrating on this particular day? I didn't get the hookup.
This is the 2-year anniversary of personal freedoms, which began on December 6, 2018.
Oh, that one.
No, what John was asking.
Yeah, it's the day the law took effect.
I understand.
What happened was we all knew it was December 6th, and I said, I think we need a party on December 6th. And
you're absolutely right.
This is the 3rd annual, apparently.
Well, we had one in 2018. We had one in 2019.
This is the second. This is the second anniversary of
right. On a Zoom session or something.
Which service you'd like to play it from?
Yep. Well, thank you very much for joining us. It's been a really long broadcast. I appreciate everyone hanging in there. Thanks to all of our guests. Thanks to Senator Irwin, John Sinclair, Reverend Steve calling from up north, all the other folks that participated too, those that were able to share their thoughts, and everybody on the chat. We had a huge chat conversation tonight. It's been wonderful. Thanks for the huge.
Oh, man. Oh, my God. How wonderful. Thank
on behalf of Michigan NORML and everybody else, thank you so much for tuning in. We appreciate that.
Well done, everybody.
Have a great night. Happy anniversary.
Hey,
everybody.
all right.
Yeah.